My name is Marx. I was born with a rare mental illness, which is called super bear syndrome. This made me an outlier since I was a child. The only sunshine is my sister. She is innocent and cute. Every time she sneaks to the hospital to see me, she always calls me brother sweetly. In front of her, I feel like a normal person. However, one day, my world completely collapsed. My parents told me that my sister had been bullied at school for a long time and was tortured for fun almost every day. The perpetrators even said confidently, "We are minors. What can you do to us?" I laughed when I heard that. I laughed really loudly, because they didn't know that I was not only a minor, but also a version 0. I had my own rules. A few days later, I saw my sister. She lay quietly in the intensive care unit, with tubes inserted all over her body and wearing a breathing mask. She was still in danger of death. My parents told me that when she was first sent to the hospital, she had lost too much blood and was almost unrecognizable. The doctor's diagnosis was chilling: perforated eardrum, impaired vision, multiple soft tissue injuries throughout the body, and even lacerations in her lower body, which actually contained glass shards. The doctor said that she couldn't bear the pain and chose to cut her wrists. What's more, the doctor also pointed out that the scars on her body were not caused in a day or two. Her body was covered with traces of long-term abuse, purple bruises, burned scars, and knife wounds, especially concentrated in shameful places such as her chest and inner thighs. My parents showed me the video that the police found on the perpetrator's phone. The scene in the video made my eyes burn and my head explode. I saw with my own eyes that my sister was curled up on the dirty toilet floor. Her clothes were stripped off and thrown into the squat toilet next to her. The leading girl, Dora, squatted in front of my sister, grabbing her hair, with a vicious smile in her eyes. She took out a utility knife and ordered the other two helpers to hold my sister down. My sister struggled in vain, and her cries tore my heart. "Smile, make a gesture." Dora was full of mischief. She carved 2 bloody words on her sister's chest with a utility knife, and then took a photo with her sister. It was like she was showing off her achievements. But that's not all. Dora took out a beer bottle from her bag, smashed it, and threatened her sister. She grinned and deliberately let the broken pieces get close to her sister, accompanied by screams, and the scene was full of sparks. I was shaking all over and almost smashed my phone. My mother burst into tears after reading only half of it. And what about the perpetrators? When I saw them at the police station, they were still laughing and didn't care at all. When questioned by their father, they admitted to bullying but showed no remorse. It turned out that Dora asked her sister to pass on the answers before the exam, but was rejected. So she attacked her sister. After venting her anger in the toilet, Dora was caught cheating in the exam. Her grades were invalidated, and her pocket money was taken away by her mother. She believed that her sister had informed on her, so she vented her anger even more fiercely. Who told her to be so mean? She deserves it. Dora did not hide her venom. Her father was so angry that his blood pressure soared when he heard this. He wanted to rush over to teach her a lesson, but was stopped by the police. "Calm down. You will be held legally responsible for this." What's even more infuriating is that one of the parents said nonchalantly, "Your children always get into trouble. Why aren't others bullied? Is there something wrong with their family education?" His words were full of sarcasm. Under the mediation of the police, Dora's parents acted condescendingly and forced the children to apologize symbolically. "Say sorry. Let's end it quickly." The 3 children said sorry casually, turned around and laughed, showing no remorse at all. The atmosphere in the police station's reception room was tense. My dad was trying to communicate with the police while holding back his anger, but at this moment, the girl named Dora took advantage of the situation and mouthed 2 words to my dad silently: "Idiot." My dad's veins popped up instantly, and he rushed over with his fist raised. Fortunately, the police reacted quickly and held him tightly. Seeing this, Dora hid behind her parents and even gave my dad a middle finger. The police were worried that the situation would deteriorate further, so they had to temporarily stop the conversation. Take me home from the mental hospital. After leaving the police station, my dad did not go home, but went directly to the mental hospital to pick me up. My dad had a gloomy face and said nothing all the way. Only when he saw me did he speak. "Chunze, Dad is here to pick you up." I was a little confused when I heard this, but I was also secretly excited. This was the first time I left the hospital so early. I was sent here when I was diagnosed with impulse control disorder because I tried to poke out the eyes of my kindergarten classmate when I was 4 years old. Unlike kindergarten, the days in the mental hospital are made up of colorful pills. "Dad, is someone bullying my sister?" I asked naively. He was silent for a while, then nodded. The police said those children were under the age of 12. At most, they would be given a warning and psychological counseling and would not be punished. I counted on my fingers and found that I was also under 12. Suddenly, a bold idea popped into my mind. Does that mean that I can also do something without being punished? Dad stared at me for a few seconds, then finally nodded, but only to those who hurt your sister. My blood boiled instantly, and my mind was full of plans of revenge. Conflict in the hospital. At this time, my mother called to say that my sister had woken up. My father and I rushed back to the hospital, only to see my sister's head teacher and several other teachers surrounding my mother, holding a so-called letter of understanding. Mr. Du, our school has already communicated with other parents. As long as you sign this letter of understanding, they will bear the medical expenses of your daughter. The head teacher had a hypocritical smile on his face. Sign this? Can those violent kids escape responsibility? My mother was so angry that she was shaking all over. While persuading them, the head teacher said hypocritically, "This is for your own good. Otherwise, which school would dare to accept your child in the future?" His tone was full of threats. Hearing this, my dad couldn't hold it in any longer and rushed forward to kick the head teacher. Seeing this, several male teachers immediately stepped forward to control my dad. The head teacher took the opportunity to grab my mom's hand and forced her to sign the letter of apology. "Shinsha, help Mom!" Dad yelled at me. Counterattack time. Hearing my father shout, I picked up an 4 bottle without hesitation and smashed it on the head of the head teacher. He covered his bloody head and looked at me in horror. "Where did you come from, crazy kid?" I smiled coldly, grabbed his hair, and slammed him against the wall. His screams attracted the hospital security, but no one dared to approach. I hit him several times until he collapsed to the ground, twitching all over. Taking advantage of the chaos, my father broke away from the teachers and protected my mother and I. He glared at them and yelled, "Get out! Otherwise, I will kill you today." Several teachers supported the head teacher and fled the hospital corridor in a panic. My sister's tears and vows. After the storm subsided temporarily, we finally saw my sister. She was lying weakly on the hospital bed, her face pale. When she saw me, she forced a smile and called out, "Brother," holding her cold little hand. I recalled the lonely time she spent with me. Even in the mental hospital, she would come to accompany me every week, tell me interesting things about school, and said that we would go to the amusement park together when I recovered. "Brother, they've been bullying me. Even the teacher scolds me. I don't want to live anymore." The sister's voice was weak and trembling. My eyes welled up, and I comforted him softly. "With your brother here, no one will dare to bully you anymore. I will definitely protect you." Reversal on hot search. That night, an interview video became a hot topic on local news. In the video, the head teacher, with his head covered in bandages, pretended to be a righteous victim and loudly accused the camera. "There has never been bullying in our school. There are only arrogant parents and students who deliberately smear the school. The school will reserve the right to pursue relevant responsibilities." Watching his lies-filled performance, I couldn't help but clench my fists. The uproar of public opinion and the calmness of my father. That night, the interview video of my sister's class teacher was trending on the internet, and the comment section was full of condemnation. Netizens stood on the side of the class teacher, accusing my family of being arrogant and unreasonable, and calling for trusting the teacher. The teacher is right. These parents are too much. Some children are just born arrogant. Looking at these comments, my father's face became more and more ugly. He didn't say much, just walked outside and made a few calls. Not long after, he drove me to another hospital, face to face with the head teacher. Tear off the mask of hypocrisy. As soon as I arrived at the door of the ward, I heard the head teacher's voice coming from inside. "Oh, don't mention it. That little guy cut his wrist. It's really going to cause trouble for me." His tone was full of impatience. "I will be promoted to director next month. Why did it have to happen at this time when there are so many other places?" He hung up the phone and was about to get up when my dad kicked him and knocked him to the ground. The head teacher screamed and rolled over. Without saying a word, I picked up the phone he had just hung up and smashed it against his head until the screen shattered and the bandage on his head was soaked with blood. "Please, please spare me." He kept waving his hands, trying to stop my attack. But I couldn't stop it all, and I only felt a kind of pleasure I had never experienced before. "You said my sister is not a human? Keep talking." I grabbed his bandage and dragged him to the toilet. He was in a mess and fell to the ground. In the toilet, the urinal had been clogged and was full of sewage, emitting a foul smell. I pressed his head down without hesitation. The head teacher's screams echoed in the toilet. The dirty water poured into his mouth and nose. He struggled desperately, but to no avail. My father stood by and said coldly, "Fulfill your duties? Don't spread rumors? Students help each other? Huh. Only you can say that." At my father's signal, I loosened my grip a little, and the head teacher collapsed to the ground, retching continuously. He was pale and couldn't even stand up. I stepped on his fingers with my feet and crushed them a few times like stepping on garbage. He curled up in pain, knelt in front of me, and cried, "I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please let me go." I learned apologies are useless. Seeing his embarrassed look, I turned to look at my dad, a little confused. The nurse had taught me before that if the other party apologized, I should not hit him again. But my dad said calmly, "It's over." His calm tone made me suddenly realize that apologies are useless. I picked up the mop in the bathroom and smashed it hard on the head teacher's face. He soon had a black eye, his teeth were broken, and his mouth was full of blood. I sneered and asked him, "You knew they were bullying my sister. Why did you do nothing? My sister was obviously the victim. Why did you scold her? Did she deserve to be beaten?" The head teacher knelt on the ground and kowtowed, crying, "I was wrong. I was really wrong. Please let me go." Finally, I forced his mouth open, made him bite the edge of the windowsill, and hit him on the back of the head with a stick. The head teacher's teeth were instantly broken, and his mouth was full of blood. I bowed my head and warned him, "Remember, if you dare to scold my sister again, I will smash your head." Target set. Revenge begins. My dad whispered a few words to the head teacher. He glanced at me, his face full of fear. I vaguely heard words like mental illness and minor. Afterwards, my dad got the detailed information of the bullies. Dora was the leader, and Zhao Yu and Song Yao followed to bully my sister in order to please her. The person recording the video was Dora's boyfriend Shenlong, a hooligan from another school who didn't go to school. My father gave this information to several of his old friends, and soon the news came. Zhao Yu's whereabouts had been found. Competition in KTV. When we arrived, Zhao Yu was standing at the door of the KTV box, holding a wine glass in one hand and a mobile phone in the other. He said into the phone disdainfully, "Apologize? For what? It's good enough that I didn't kill her. Do you want me to apologize?" He hung up the phone and turned to enter the box, but I kicked him in. There were two boys sitting in the box. Seeing this, they stood up and scolded me. My father grabbed the bottle on the coffee table and hit one of them on the head. I swung the ashtray and hit the other one in the face. The two fell to the ground screaming, bleeding. The box suddenly became quiet. Zhao Yu was stunned, holding her chest and shouting, "Who are you?" I sneered and slapped him. "I'm your father." He recognized my father and still cursed with disdain. "Kill me if you dare. Otherwise, I will beat your daughter every time I see her in the future." Chris, Sprice. On the way here, my father repeatedly told me that as long as no one died, I could do anything else. With that, I pushed Chris to the ground, grabbed his hair, and slapped him hard. After more than a dozen slaps, his face was swollen like a pig's head, his eyes were dull, and blood was hanging from the corners of his mouth. "Do you know you're wrong?" I asked in a low voice. Chris barely opened his eyes and said, "I'm wrong." His provocation made me sneer. I took off my coat and wrapped it around a beer bottle, smashing the bottle to the ground. Shards of glass scattered all over the floor. Chris's eyes were a bit confused, but turned into horror in the next second. I wrapped the fragments in clothes and stuffed them into his mouth. I also blocked his attempt to spit them out with clothes and slapped him. He twitched in pain and blood flowed out of his mouth. I grabbed his hair and asked, "What now? Is it wrong?" "I'm wrong. I'm wrong." Chris finally begged for mercy. "What's wrong?" I sneered and lowered my voice. "It's all wrong," he answered in a crying and aggrieved voice. I stepped on his face, looked at the bloody mess, and said in a cold voice, "This is just like what you did to my sister. I hope you can learn your lesson and don't bully others in the future." Leaving Chris lying on the ground, my father and I left the KTV. Song Yao, Lessons from the Night Alley. After leaving the KTV, Dad used Chris's phone to contact several other people. Song Yao said she was in a nightclub, Jackie Chan was in an internet cafe, and Dora didn't reply. We immediately went to the nightclub where Song Yao was. When we arrived, the nightclub had just ended. Song Yao's face was red, and she was obviously drunk, and her steps were unsteady. She was holding a mobile phone in her hand, showing off to her friends next to her. "Look, this person deserves to be beaten." On the screen of the mobile phone was a video of her and others bullying my sister. Song Yao kicked my sister in the video, cursing, and the people next to her laughed. Sister Yao, you are really brave enough to be so ruthless, someone applauded. That's nothing. When she returns to school, I will ask her to do a striptease for you, Song Yao said arrogantly, her tone full of pride. After her friends left, she staggered out of the nightclub alone. My father and I followed her all the way until she walked into a dark alley. When the time was right, I stepped forward, grabbed her collar, and kicked her into the alley. Song Yao fell to the ground and screamed. I picked up a brick from the roadside and smashed it on her head without hesitation. Du Xiangyang knows, right? I'm her brother. Song Yao's alcoholic effect instantly dissipated. Her face was filled with panic, and her voice was trembling. What do you want to do? You were very happy when you bullied my sister, right? My voice was cold, but with a hint of smile. You're crazy. She glared at me and cursed. I'm a psychopath. I raised a brick and hit her in the face. Blood flowed out of her mouth, mixed with a few loose teeth. Song Yao screamed and tried to crawl away, but I stepped on her back to stop her from moving. Knildon, I said coldly. Song Yao hesitated for a moment, obviously unwilling. I picked up a stick and hit her leg hard. Don't you understand? She was obedient now. She knelt on the ground and cried for mercy. I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. I will never bully others again. You have to have an attitude to admit your mistakes. I laughed sarcastically. Don't you like slapping people? Then slap yourself 100 times. Song Yao raised her hand and began to slap herself slowly. Pa, pa. Each slap was accompanied by her crying and trembling. Use more force. I kicked her. Song Yao increased her strength, and every slap was accompanied by her sobs. I was wrong. I shouldn't bully others. I am a bitch, and I deserve to be beaten. I looked at her coldly and suddenly said, please fan her again. You didn't count enough just now. Hearing this, Song Yao finally broke down. With a ferocious expression, she roared at me. If you have the guts, kill me today. I didn't bother to talk anymore, so I picked up a brick and smashed it against her arm. Her screams echoed in the alley until she collapsed to the ground, unable to move like a dead fish. At this time, my father stopped me and said, that's enough. If you continue to hit me, something bad will happen. I gasped and stared at Song Yao, who was lying on the ground. I was still burning with anger. I couldn't imagine what I would do next. After dealing with Song Yao, I was still in an extremely excited state. Chapter 19. The Outsider's Calculation. Son, I know you must be unhappy. You saw what happened today. Mom and Dad don't have your abilities, and your sister is still in the hospital. If something like this happens a few more times, can you guarantee that nothing will happen to my parents and my sister next time? Can you guarantee that you can come on time every time and rescue us? Marx was silent. He really can't. I'm also unable to do everything. But if you have a group of like-minded friends, will they stand by and do nothing? Li Yuefan did not force her son to agree directly. Instead, he was guided little by little. She knew her son's paranoia and that he often couldn't control his temper. Even a careless move, it will affect others. Only by letting the son accept these people from the bottom of his heart can the outcome be changed. Even if one day she and her husband died because of some people, his son can also rely on this group of like-minded friends to protect his sister and even himself. Marx remained silent, but the mother had already sensed the change from his eyes. He has agreed. Don't worry. As long as you can find out the situation of your wife and children, I believe he will help. Johnson's mouth twitched, still a little bit unbelievable. After all, being able to convince a mentally ill person is an extremely strange thing in itself. But he is now. There seems to be no second choice. Don't worry, Annie. My men are injured. Let them go to your hospital to recuperate. With them around, even if we can't stop the enemy, we can at least delay them for a while. And they can send us notifications as soon as possible. I can definitely protect your safety. With this sentence, Li Yuefan was relieved. In fact, what she cares about more is her own son. They owe too much to this son. Even if they died, they didn't want anything to happen to their son. If I had more friends like Johnson, no matter how paranoid Marx's character was, there was always some security. I feel relieved with your words. The two of them definitely need some time to get used to each other. Li Yuefan didn't say anything more, but instead pulled up Zhao Minor, who was still sitting on the ground. Marx deeply. He said politely, thank you, Xiaomei's brother. Thank you for saving me. Afterwards, under the leadership of Li Yuefan and others, they returned to the room together and bandaged the injured. It seems to be almost done. Everyone sat in the hall, looking at each other. Among them, Marx pulled his duckbill hat to cover his eyes. It seems that he is unwilling to communicate with these people. It was Johnson who first broke the awkward atmosphere. Started chatting with everyone. Until Li Yuefan was ready, Johnson arranged for his men to follow her to the hospital. I reported the situation to them at any time and felt relieved. In front of the hospital, Johnson turned his head and glanced at Marx. "Why don't you go and see your sister?" Marx said nothing. He turned and got into a black Buick on the street. Johnson was quick to open the passenger door and get in. Marx tightened his grip, suppressed the thought of killing Johnson, and rushed out with his foot on the accelerator. At the same time, but a group of people arrived and a fierce battle broke out in the alley, checking the surroundings for signs of fighting. The leader was a middle-aged man who looked to be around 40 years old, with a calm look. With a bit of sharpness, he waited until he finished checking the surrounding situation. Several of his men also came to report. "Master Lu, we have checked, and according to the report from the spy we have been monitoring, it should be the boy who came out of the mental hospital who won the fight." Hear what others say. The middle-aged man in his 40s, who was called Master Lu, couldn't help but narrow his eyes. The group of people who took action should be Johnson, right? The person standing next to him nodded. It is indeed Johnson. He must have been used as a gun. This idiot doesn't even know who captured his wife and children. He believes whatever others say. He is simply bringing shame to us outsiders. But that guy is really capable. He was able to defeat Johnson single-handedly. If I remember correctly, the photo our men just sent showed Johnson and that guy getting in the same car. Others also felt a little emotional, but I dare not say much. Only the man called Master Lu squinted his eyes, stood up and looked into the distance. I saw a woman in a red evening dress walking towards me with a smile on her face. The woman was very beautiful, about 24 or 25 years old, with a small, powdered face that was so delicate that it was almost breathtaking. With her perfect figure, it is no exaggeration to call her a stunner. Any man who sees her would be unable to suppress the evil thoughts in his heart. "Miss Sue, why are you so troublesome to come here in person?" The woman surnamed Sue just walked in, stretched out a slender finger, and touched the wall next to her that she had punched with her fist. It seems that the fight just now was very intense. Indeed, after all, it was Johnson who did it himself. "Don't you plan to help Johnson and that kid?" The recent ups and downs in Shanghai City seem to be related to that kid. Master Lu nodded. "Indeed, it is related. After our investigation, we found that the boy had been living in a mental hospital. I don't know where he learned all these skills. I guess he may have a master behind him. His sister must have been thrown from the building by someone. We can't find any clues as to who did it, but it must be related to the Wong family and the Zhou family." The woman in the red evening dress just smiled and shook her head. "You should know that's not what I'm asking. That kid might be a breakthrough." Master Lu waved his hand. "It's hard to say whether it's a breakthrough or not. We can't expose our main strength too early. Behind Shanghai City, there are the Tang family, and they are not easy to deal with." "So, your idea is to pretend you didn't see it?" "Not entirely." Master Lu pinched his chin. Although Johnson is just a local tyrant in the north, his boxing skills are amazing. He is known as one of the 4 tigers of Beichuan. This title alone is not to be underestimated. But if they want us to help, they have to make some more achievements. Besides, if even the Wong family and the Zhou family are busy, there is no need for them to help. After Master Lu finished speaking, he took out a black and gold card and said, "Recently, a mall has opened in Shanghai City. If Miss Sue is free, you can go shopping. With this card, I will pay for all your expenses." "Thank you very much, Master Lu. I'll take the card, but you'll have to pay the money. Miss Hu is still bolite. We are not a family, so we should keep it clear." Mr. Lu smiled slowly, but didn't say much. Instead, he left with his own people. As for Miss Sue, she stared at the fist marks left on the wall for a long time without saying a word. I just don't know how big a storm these 2 people can stir up in Shanghai City. It would be best if we could force those people out. It's a pity that there are too many outsiders. They are like a pile of scattered sand, and it is difficult to unite. Otherwise, the group of people in Shanghai City would not be able to be arrogant for long. She shook her head, twisted her graceful waist slightly, and disappeared into the night with her men. Chapter 20. Johnson, Xiang's Sun family. Silvery moonlight. It was like a thin veil, covering the sky above this brightly lit city. It is like a masked girl, looming in the distance, with a mood that makes people want to explore it more deeply. Heading to the factory in the suburbs, on the path bathed in moonlight, a black sedan slowly stopped at the gate of the dilapidated factory. Two people walked out. One was wearing a duckbill cap, a white shirt, and blue jeans. A tall man wearing black cloak. He was about 34 or 35, with a steady step and a long breath. Together, they stepped into the factory in front of them. The three people locked inside were chained and tied to a pillar. If they had used ropes before, they would have had a chance to escape. But now, the chances are slim. Johnson, who was still dozing off, heard footsteps outside, and his pupils contracted slightly. The scene where Marx took out his anger on the rabbit was still vivid in his mind. Thinking of that almost sick boy coming back again, he couldn't help but feel depressed. Even the other two people, after sensing the commotion outside, quickly turned their eyes to the factory gate. But he found that the person who came this time, in addition to Marx, was also a man in his 30s. His muscular body was clearly visible, and every step he took gave people a heavy and powerful feeling. Johnson is obviously a martial artist, has seen countless people, and has strong skills himself. Otherwise, he would not be able to become the Wong family's right-hand man. When he saw the man in his 30s who walked in, his brows twitched subconsciously. Then the throat rolled. Swallowed. Another master who is not inferior to Marx. And there are several hideous scars extending from the left arm to the chest, even if it's covered up by a tattoo. But he still discovered at a glance that in addition to being a master, he had also experienced a lot of life and death trials. Such a person, even if he is not as good as Marx, makes people feel a mountain of pressure. That kid, where did he find this person from? This shouldn't be. This guy is a psychopath. He's been in the hospital for 4 years. Why does it feel like things are getting more and more difficult? A small thing. It was hard for them to imagine that things had come to this point. After all, Chen Xiaomei is just a child from a poor family. With the means used by the Wong and Zhou families, it would be too easy to control them. Based on previous situations, this problem would have been resolved countless times already. Unfortunately, this time, what they thought was foolproof caused a huge uproar. It seems that other forces have joined in. Chairman Wong, I'm afraid you've miscalculated. I murmured in my heart. Johnson closed his eyes and stopped looking at the two people approaching. But Johnson next to him obviously didn't intend to let him go. After coming in, he found that Johnson was not simple. At least he is a capable person who knows something. He glanced at Marx next to him and said with an itchy hand, "Give me the key. I want to fight him. Haven't you had enough of the fight in the alley before?" Johnson was a little silent for a moment, but still snorted. "You are different from him. Although I have skills in fighting you, your method is too brutal and there is no method. It's just like a fight between street thugs. I really don't know why I lost to you." For him, against Marx was such a frustrating feeling. First of all, we are not as strong as them. Secondly, the moves used by the opponent have no tricks at all, making it difficult for you to understand or see through them. The more I fight, the more I feel constrained. On the contrary, the opponent fought harder and harder, and his attacks became faster and faster. The moves are still confusing, and you can't see any clues, but they can still beat you into submission. Johnson in front of him, he became his punching bag. After all, he felt a little uncomfortable if he didn't vent out the frustration he had just experienced in the alley. Fortunately, although Marx refuted, he still threw the key to Johnson, even though he didn't think Johnson could help in any way. But he still took his mother's words to heart. Got the key. Johnson opened the lock behind Johnson without any hesitation and then pulled the man out. "You're tied up anyway, so how about we have a fight? If you win, I'll make your life easier. If you want to eat something, I'll buy it for you." Johnson is not a coward. Otherwise, he would not be able to be the right-hand man of the Wong family. He just spat on the ground, twisted his neck, and rushed over without hesitation. The two of them were equally fast in their attacks, but still too slow compared to Marx. Therefore, Marx just glanced at them for a few seconds and then stopped looking at them. Instead, he walked to the side of the investigator and the driver, pulled their cell phones out of their pockets. "There should be an internal group chat of the Zhou family in your mobile phone. Open it for me. I want to see what you have said in the Zhou family in the past few days. How dare they resist?" After unlocking the fingerprint lock of the phone, he found the Zhou family's group chat. There were 2 groups in it, and everyone had been kicked out. It was obvious that they also realized that the investigator and the driver might be caught, so they made preparations for both scenarios. However, he still found some clues from some chat records. "Someone from the Zhou family went to the hospital to look for my parents. Could it be them? He suspected that the Zhou family was behind the ambush of his mother in the alley. If they are really members of the Zhou family, they have to go to the hospital where Dora is and let them know what the consequences are. Certainly, the Wong family was also among his suspects. After all, the other party was also highly suspicious. Just as he pinched his chin and thought for a few minutes, there was a loud bang. Johnson was knocked to the ground, his left face swollen, and he gasped. I couldn't get up for a long time. He felt extremely shocked. The man in front of him, who was in his early 30s and dressed in armor, was much more terrifying than he had imagined. If they really fight among the entire Wong family's bodyguard team, I guess only Chris can compete with him. As for the rest, whoever comes will die. At the same time, he shifted his gaze to Marx, who was frowning and thinking beside him. I'm surprised that this kid actually found a boxing master. If he fights with bare hands, I'm afraid there are only a handful of people in the whole Shanghai city who can beat Johnson. It seems that Shanghai city is about to change. It may seem like a small matter to a big shot, but to this young man who just came out of a mental hospital, it's a huge event like the sky falling and the earth collapsing. If this problem cannot be solved, there will be no peace between the Zhou and Wong families. Even the people behind the scenes may be implicated. Calm down. Johnson did not resist. He stretched out his hands and was tied to the pillar again. Johnson, who walked forward, patted him on the shoulder. You are quite capable, judging by the way you attack. You should be from the Xiang Sun family. It's a pity that you lack some charm. Otherwise, you could have beaten me a few more times. Of course, it's also related to your abdominal injury, but even if your injury heals, you still can't last more than 10 moves in my hands. After saying, Johnson sat beside him contentedly. The previous depression in the alley was now swept away. Late night, he went out to collect some firewood, lit a fire in the factory to keep warm, and leaned against the fire, and fell asleep unknowingly. Chapter 21. It is impolite not to reciprocate. The night passed in a flash, and Marx got up early, sat by the fire and added a few logs, until Johnson next to him shrank back in fear. He then spoke. It's time to get up. Johnson, who was lying on the ground, was stunned and took out his cell phone to take a look. It's just past 4 o'clock, and it's not even daybreak yet. What are you getting up for? Even if you go out for breakfast, I'm afraid the breakfast vendors won't have their food on display. Last night, when you went to see my mom, who contacted you, and where were you? It's time to settle this account with these people. Hearing this, Johnson came to his senses and realized that he also needed to find those people and find out the information about his wife and children. He immediately forced himself to cheer up and followed Marx into the car. Half an hour later, in a remote village. At the back there is a small villa with fairly luxurious decoration. A middle-aged man in his 40s was in the study, turning on a pale yellow light. In front of him is a laptop. There are also several mobile phones. A lot of messages came to my phone one after another. But the man just rubbed his temples tiredly, feeling like his brain was about to explode. Until a woman came in from outside with a cup of coffee. Brother Lou, why are you up so early? Is it that the family's problem has not been resolved yet? They're just a few ants at the bottom of society. Are they really not afraid of death? The woman looked confused. I really can't understand it. Why has a small problem become what it is today? The middle-aged man called Brother Lou had a bitter look on his face. Because this is the location where the street fight took place last night. It wasn't just their people who showed up. There were also outsiders appearing. This matter has not been resolved yet. In his opinion, it is very likely related to outsiders. This time, they just used Johnson. In fact, Johnson's wife and the 2 children were not captured by them. In fact, they don't know exactly where it is. But since the person above has already given the order, he could only carry out the task to the end. Johnson has disappeared. His men are now in the hospital. They did not follow our orders. I'm afraid something unexpected happened inside. The woman put the coffee on the computer desk. I glanced at the flashing cell phones. The look of astonishment on his face became even more serious. No way. That guy is known as the 4 Tigers of Beichuan. He is the most loyal person and is also well known for being good to his wife and children. If I remember correctly, he came to Shanghai City this time because someone promised him an official identity. He came all the way here so that his wife and children could get rid of their black background. Otherwise, with the money he earns, it would be enough for his family to live without worries. Brother Lou, who was sitting in front of the computer desk, just sneered. Sit back and relax? With the money he earns, his living standard is only slightly better than that of ordinary people. In the eyes of the real big shots, it's nothing. Perhaps it's because of the internal structure of Shanghai City. Have a good understanding. Every time Brother Lu mentioned that person, always in awe, just as he was about to pick up one of the phones. Check the information inside. Then I heard a commotion outside. Cursing followed, and the sound of things being pushed over. Brother Lu knocked on the table violently. Those guys, are they going to clash with the villagers again? I've told them to be more restrained. Our actions this time must not be exposed. The woman next to her frowned. That shouldn't be the case. At this point in time, it's not even time for rotation yet, and they're already exhausted. How can they have the energy to get into a conflict with the villagers? Besides, they have been quite peaceful recently, and the villagers shouldn't be in uproar. But before they could finish their words, there were a few more bangs. There were several screams from below. The door of the room they were in was kicked open by someone. Huge force. The whole door was kicked so hard that it was shaking. The moment it hit the wall, even the door cracked. One held a silver-white scalpel. The figure wearing a baseball cap, white shirt, and blue jeans looked at them coldly. What's even more terrifying is, he was dragging a corpse in his hands. From the corridor outside, you can see the bloodstains left along the way. It was like the god of death walking out of the underworld. The violent aura that emanated from it made them tremble deep in their hearts. After this person appeared, another loud noise was heard from below, and the sound of breaking glass. Another person soon came up the stairs. He spat a mouthful of blood on the ground. He held a big knife in his hand and looked at them gloomily. Son Johnson, see who's coming. Brother Lu couldn't help swallowing. Scared to death. I never thought that my hiding place would be discovered by someone. Actually, that's true. Johnson was worried before. After contacting the other party, he arranged for his men to follow. Only then did I find out that the other person lived in a village in the suburbs. Although he seldom goes out, he has not had many conflicts with the villagers, but was still marked on the map by Johnson. Therefore, when he came over, he was already familiar with the route. It's the guy named Lu. He's the one who contacted me. Brother Lu's brows trembled, and he wanted to pick up one of the phones to tip off, while he couldn't stop talking. Do you know? Bang. The words haven't been finished yet. Marx had already rushed forward, grabbed the other person's hair, and slammed him hard on the table. There was a click. The table was smashed, and a crack appeared. Brother Lu was also confused. He didn't even have the strength to fight back and was lifted against the wall like a chicken. Then Marx pulled his hair, hitting the wall again and again. There were muffled bang sounds, echoing in the quiet morning. It's not daybreak yet. The people outside were dealt with again. There was blood all around. The woman who brought the coffee screamed in fright and collapsed to the ground. Although she knew what Brother Lu was doing, it was not something that could be made public. But I didn't expect it to be so dangerous. It was obvious that they were here to seek revenge. As far as she knew, there were more than 20 thugs in the villa, but they were all dealt with in a short time. The other party also dragged the thug's body upstairs. There was not a single obstruction along the way. It goes without saying that the person who could accomplish this must have extremely high skills. Even Brother Lu was hit so hard that he saw stars and his forehead was covered in blood. The wall was also covered in blood. Johnson, who was standing behind, saw that the man was about to be crushed to death. Quickly stepped forward to stop Marx. Brother, stop. Stop. Aren't we here to investigate the mastermind? If you kill someone, who are we going to look for? Marx, who had been holding Brother Lu's head, finally paused and forced himself to swallow the anger in his eyes. He looked back again and saw the woman not far away. Chapter 22. Killing is not the end. Since this man cannot be killed, let's kill that woman first. The woman was also terrified. What the hell? He is simply a madman. He has not said a word since he rushed up, and all he has in his mind is trying to kill people. Even Brother Lu noticed it. Marx's brain was clearly not right. Thinking of the information I had obtained previously, I realized that this person might be the mentally ill patient marked in the information. A pervert who couldn't control his emotions, was extremely violent, and pierced his own palm when he was 7 or 8 years old. If you argue with a mentally ill person, it may be because you think you are not dying fast enough. As for the woman next to him, Brother Lu no longer cared about her. Marx walked over and grabbed the other person's hair. The woman panicked too. Without even waiting for Brother Lu to speak, he immediately said he won't say it, and he doesn't dare to say it. All his wealth and life depend on that person. If he tells, his whole family will die. If he doesn't tell, at most he will die alone. Even if you open your mouth, you won't tell the truth. Brother Lu heard that this bitch was so scared that she betrayed him just by one look from him. He immediately got up angrily and wanted to slap the bitch twice, but she didn't rush over yet. A silvery white light passed across his throat. Blood spurted out. Brother Liu covered his neck and looked at Marx in disbelief. He had never imagined this in his dreams. The person who had a calm face just now would suddenly attack and kill with one blow. The blood stained the entire face of the woman in front of him. Feeling the boiling hot blood and the suffocating fear, the woman's teeth were chattering. Johnson widened his eyes and thought to himself, "Buddy, some things are really hard to communicate with you. What should they do if that woman is not telling the truth?" But Marx didn't care about that. Instead, he walked towards the woman step by step, and the woman said in a lost voice, Although I don't know much, all his secrets are in those 3 phones. I also know the passwords. I often see him unlocking things, so he can't be wrong. You can contact the person on the phone and ask him out. Then you'll know whether it's true or not. Please don't kill me. I'm just his mistress who was supported by him with his money. I'm also struggling at the bottom of society, just trying to make some money to live a good life. Those are not things I can participate in." The woman knelt on the ground and kowtowed uncontrollably. The blood that filled the air broke down all her mental defenses. Johnson was afraid that Marx might kill the woman in a fit of impulsiveness, so he quickly pulled her to the table and asked her to enter the password. After turning on the phone, several messages popped up immediately. 3 mobile phones. One is responsible for contacting the people above. One is for daily life. Another one is used to contact the people under his command. In addition to arranging Johnson, Liu also contacted several top fighters and promised them many benefits. 2 of them were tempted. If all of them took action, Johnson's men might not be able to stop them. Then they turned on the mobile phone used to contact the person. There is a communication app inside, and there is only one person's avatar in the app, and there is only this one friend. There are also records of daily communications. After a brief look, Johnson slammed his fist on the table. "It's just as your mother said. They don't even plan to let me go. If I really succeed and sneak into the open sea, they will throw me overboard to feed the fish. Even my wife and children were not captured by them. They don't even know who holds them now." Then they tried to contact the person on the phone. The answer was, "Okay, let's meet at Nanjianka tomorrow night at 8:20. A short sentence. But the woman next to him couldn't help but widen her eyes and remind him, Don't believe what that person says. I have been with that Liu for at least 2 years, and that person has never specified a meeting place. There may be people monitoring us. The information here has already been spread out immediately." A woman's reminder. It's just to save his life. After all, these 2 people are so cruel. I guess I got the information I wanted. He would kill her in the blink of an eye. If you don't believe me, you can wait until around 8 o'clock tomorrow and go to the area near Nanjianko to see if there will be an ambush. I just want to stay alive. This is also considered helping you. You can take me back first. If what I said is true, I only beg you to spare my life." Hear the woman's words. It also made Johnson next to him a little wary. He is not as bold as Marx. There is no such mysterious and suffocating method as Marx, especially when you just dive in. He discovered it, and not on the same level as Marx. The guy was able to determine the route and find the hidden cameras just by taking a look. Silently, he got behind the guard. Just based on these means, he is several times, even more than 10 times, superior to him. His best skill is just boxing. It cannot be said that he knows nothing about assassination, but he only has a superficial understanding. "Brother, I think this woman is still somewhat useful. How about taking her back to the abandoned factory first? Anyway, there are already 3 people in the factory. One more or one less makes no more or less." Of course, Marx also wanted to obtain more intelligence. After a little hesitation, I agreed. The woman was tied up and stuffed into the car. After taking a look at the villa behind them and cleaning up the scene, they returned to the car. As for the situation inside the villa, they were actually not worried at all because the man surnamed Liu was involved in too many things. There are countless secrets hidden in it, and I'm afraid the mastermind behind it doesn't want the secrets to be leaked. Because once you follow the clues, with the help of the official background, you will be able to find out the trick quickly. As expected, after they left, a huge fire soon broke out in the villa, burning the place to ashes. I could even see several people coming in and out, and I had no idea what they were doing. At this time, Shanghai City, in a mysterious manner, there sat a man with a gloomy face. There is also a big black mole on the left cheek. Looking at the real-time monitoring appearing on the computer, his eyes narrowed into slits. It seems that Johnson has teamed up with that kid. The man surnamed Liu doesn't dare to expose my affairs, but that woman is a nuisance. If there is a chance, I must make this woman disappear along with the secret of the villa. Wotapiti. We can try tomorrow to see if we can catch these two guys at Nanjianko. After saying that, his face became even gloomier. He turned his head to look outside and made a phone call. Everything happened after this operation. Gradually calmed down. Chapter 23. The Girl of the Past. The Captured Woman. Just throw it behind the seat and Marx drives at full speed. We also found several cars along the way that wanted to follow us. But in just a moment, he was thrown halfway across the street. Johnson, who was sitting in the passenger seat, was stunned. Not expected. Marx is such a fierce fighter, and he is also a great driver. If he were to compete in a race, he would surely win a place, right? The person who was following him was finally thrown off the track after running several blocks. Boss, we lost the person. After a while, a black car stopped behind. Said to the other end of the phone. What followed was a scolding that made the person who was following him look a little bitter. The other side. Marx parked the car under an overpass. Get off the main driver's seat. He doesn't plan to go back so soon. He has to go again to see the class teacher at school. It was all right that I let the other party escape last time. This time it won't be that simple. Drive the car back first. I have something to do. I'll text you when I need a car. After saying, he walked away on his own, leaving Johnson confused, but he still came to the driver's seat and scratched his head. This guy, isn't he going to go back and interrogate this woman? Although I know that I can't get much information from this woman. But Johnson still holds on to a glimmer of hope. As long as he can find his wife and children, he is willing to do anything now. Thinking of this, he drove towards the dilapidated factory in the suburbs. As the day dawned today, the streets still seemed extremely deserted. Marx trotted towards the school. He dispelled the last bit of coldness in his body, ran until he was covered in sweat, and finally stopped. At the intersection, I saw a girl about the same age as my sister standing there, selling breakfast. It seemed that the weather was getting a little colder, so the girl rubbed her hands together and then put them in front of her to warm them next to the breakfast cage. The moment she stretched out her hand, Marx saw the circular scar that ran across the entire palm. It felt like being pierced by something. When he saw the scar the size of a ballpoint pen, he couldn't help but frown. If it were before, he certainly didn't feel anything about it. But ever since what happened to my sister, he vaguely felt about hurting others. It seems that there is a certain bottom line, just like the emotions he could feel. When his parents taught him in the past, and when the doctor in the mental hospital said that he didn't take it to heart at all. Or rather, there is no fluctuation in this emotion. Coupled with his personality, it seemed as if it was destined. Just like a stubborn bull, once on that road, there is no turning back. Thinking about it now, I inexplicably feel a strange emotion spreading in my heart. He couldn't express this emotion. He just frowned and remained silent for a long time, then looked up at the girl who was about the same age as his sister. The girl also noticed him. When he saw Marx's face clearly, he couldn't help but shiver and wanted to run into the alley with the breakfast cart. But the next second, because of the huge movement and panic, the things on the small cart were scattered all over the floor, accompanied by the sound of tinkling. The girl also fell in front of him. Marx didn't know what to say or what to do. He just felt a little uneasy staying here because of the strange emotion that kept spreading in his heart. So he pulled up his cap, disappeared silently on the street. The girl stared blankly at his departing back and looked at the scattered things. The fear in his eyes has not completely dissipated. If she remembered correctly, it was this man who, when she was a child, pierced her palm with a pencil. Her hands were permanently damaged, and she couldn't even hold a pen. These years, because of the injury on her right hand, she had no idea how many times she had been looked down upon. Think about it now. I felt wronged and couldn't stop tears from falling. Finally, he cleaned up the mess quietly, pulled the breakfast car back. But when she returned to the alley, she heard the sound of wine bottles being smashed again. Accompanied by the man's cursing and the woman's pleading, the girl walked out again, feeling aggrieved. The items on the breakfast cart had been replaced with new ones. Her face was full of fatigue, and her body was trembling as she continued to sell breakfast at the street corner. It was just a cold wind blowing on that thin piece of clothing. The girl's face turned even paler. At the school gate, Mark stayed there for a whole day, not knowing whether the female teacher had gotten the news. I don't come to school anymore. After all, he came to the school to wait that day. They were ambushed by Johnson and others. His purpose seems not difficult to guess. I just want to get more information from these teachers. It seems that this class teacher must know something. Otherwise, everyone else would still be in class, but she is the only one missing. Marx frowned. The sky around me darkened. Around 8 o'clock, even he couldn't sit still anymore. But he still wanted to wait until the evening self-study was over and wait a little longer. If he still didn't find the person, he would have to start from other places. Time passes by little, accompanied by the ding, ding, ding bell for the end of get out of class. The students are out of school. Some of them live in the school, some are picked up by their parents, and you can even see some teachers walking out of the school. The only person he didn't see was his sister's homeroom teacher. It seems that he has indeed received the news. He probably won't be back in the short term. He stood up from the stool. I left the school with my head down. It was already very late. It was past 10 o'clock, and he was too lazy to run back to the dilapidated factory. I planned to follow the small path next to me to the urban village to find the mother and daughter and have a good night's rest. His steps were steady. There was a bar street near the urban village, and he walked across the street. Slowly walked into the slightly chaotic place. As a result, as soon as I came in, I ran into the girl who was selling breakfast at the street corner in the morning. The girl was holding some plates, bowls, and chopsticks in her hands. Came out of a restaurant. Both hands were full, and his right hand, which had been pierced, couldn't help but tremble slightly when holding those things. The girl obviously also saw Marx. She was so scared that she took a deep breath and took a few steps back. But consider that I have so many things in my hands. If everything is broken, she won't know how much of her salary this month will be deducted. If the money is short, she will be beaten and scolded by her stepfather when she returns home. Her mother didn't care about her affairs and was only concerned with pleasing her stepfather. When I was a child, my palm was pierced. While growing up, he was often beaten and scolded by his stepfather. This made her develop a very cowardly character. When she saw Marx coming towards her, she was so scared that she almost cried. Until it gets close. Marx then realized that the girl's clothes had been washed so much that they turned white. He didn't know how long she had been wearing them. In this kind of weather, she looked a little thin, perhaps because she was too cold. Her little hands had already turned red. Even his expression was full of fatigue. Fortunately, Marx didn't say anything. He just pulled his baseball cap and walked past the girl, as if they had never met before. The girl breathed a sigh of relief and didn't dare to approach the boy who had hurt her. Of course, she heard it too. Marx is a complete psychopath, and he is afraid that he will be harmed by the other party again. I just want to avoid him as much as possible. Book Friends Group 921507559. Everyone is welcome to join the group and dress up as a woman to show the author. Chapter 24, Never Dare Again. Marx, who walked away, he actually didn't go far. Because when I met this girl again, that inexplicable emotion, it spread in his heart again, and he couldn't help but touch his chest with his hand. It was like someone was pulling at something inside him. Can't explain. Anyway, I feel a little uncomfortable. He simply climbed up to a 2-story building from the alley next to him, stood on the roof, and looked down at the situation below. The girl seemed very busy. After going in for a few minutes, she would come out carrying a lot of things. When the garbage is almost piled up, I will put on gloves and sit quietly at the back of the alley. While washing the dishes and bowls, Ming was already exhausted and sweating profusely, and his injured hand was often shaking uncontrollably. But the girl still had no complaints, just working tirelessly, until a fat, big-eared man covered in grease pushed open the back door of the kitchen. "Gu Jiejia, your salary has been settled. This month, you overturned a teapot and scalded a customer. The medical expenses alone cost more than 1,000 yuan. Also, the customer's clothes were not cheap, so I will deduct 600 yuan from you." But Gu Jiejia listened, but he couldn't help but widen his eyes and asked blankly, "Didn't the customer say that I don't need to compensate?" At that time, because the customer knew Gu Jiejia's background, he didn't say anything, paid the money, and left. "Why are you deducting her money now?" The customer didn't say anything, but he probably won't come again. "The loss will be deducted from your salary." Gu Jiejia knew very well that the man was deliberately making things difficult for her. She also knew that the other party would find various reasons to deduct her salary. I just didn't expect it to be so excessive this time. 2/3 of her salary was deducted at once. If I go back, how should she explain this to her stepfather and mother? I'm afraid he will be beaten again. Love it or not, if not, then pack up and get out of here. Seeing the fat man covered in grease, his expression gradually became irritable. Gu Jiejia, who was already cowardly, bit her red lips, lowered her head, and said nothing. The fat boss took out another 1,500 yuan and said, "Don't say I don't take care of you. I was going to deduct 1,600 yuan from you. But since you are so pitiful, I will deduct 1,000 yuan from you. And what do you think about what I proposed to you last time? Be my girlfriend, I'll pay your rent, and you can get away from your parents. When the time comes, you work for me and I'll raise your salary to 4,000. You can also save some money and do whatever you want. The fat and big-eared man looked the girl up and down and swallowed subconsciously. He seemed to have been greedy for it for a long time. His eyes became a little wanton, his mouth opened, and he was laughing so happily. Of course, Gu Jiejia would not agree. She would save a few hundred yuan every month from her salary and give the rest to her stepfather and mother. When she had saved enough money, she would leave this city, find a place she liked, and say goodbye to the unbearable past. As for the proposal of the man in front of him, after she took the money, she shook her head and went back to washing the dishes. The fat and big-eared man curled his lips and said, "You're just a stinking dishwasher, but you're still so arrogant. I can just spend 300 or 500 yuan and go out and find someone who's prettier than you, right?" After saying that, the boss went back and closed the door before leaving, for fear that the warm air coming out from inside would be enjoyed by Gu Jiejia. Marx, who was standing on the rooftop of the second floor opposite, watching all this, his eyes remained calm. However, when the restaurant was closed for the day, Gu Jiejia was seen leaving from the alley behind, while the fat and big-eared boss, carrying a bag, hummed a little tune and closed the door. He climbed down from the upstairs and followed the fat and big-eared man into a dim path not far away. The man seemed to notice something when he turned around. A huge fist hit him in the face. The huge force threw him away. His 2 front teeth fell to the ground, and blood gushed out of his mouth. He let out a shrill scream and rolled several times. When he looked up at the figure who hit him, fists rained down on his face again. Each one was so powerful that he cried out in pain. "I'm wrong, brother. I'm wrong. Have I offended you in some way? Isn't it enough for me to admit my mistake? Please don't hit me anymore." The fat and big-eared boss had bruises all over his face. Several of his teeth were broken, and he had a lisp when he spoke. "Money. Do you have any?" A silver scalpel was placed on the boss's neck. Under the dim moonlight, a pair of suffocatingly cold eyes stared at the boss in front of him. He could feel that if he dared to say no, he would probably be killed on the spot. What the hell? Is this really a person's eyes? The fat and big-eared boss in front of him suspected that the person staring at him was a beast. "Money, money. Why didn't you tell me earlier? You just want money. I would have given it to you earlier. Why did you beat me like this?" The boss was about to cry. "Don't you just want money? Can't he just give it to me? What are you doing?" Ouch. I know Marx wants money. The rest will be easy, because today is payday. He even went to the bank and withdrew a large sum of money. Now that the salaries have been paid, there is still about 30,000 left. He took them all out of his bag and gave them to Marx, fearing that it might not be enough. He took off the gold watch on his wrist, the necklace on his neck, and all his valuable belongings, fearing that Marx would continue to attack him. This guy, he has no sense of propriety when hitting people. At least others will avoid hitting the fatal parts. But he saw it clearly just now. This guy wanted to hit him in a fatal place. If he hadn't been lucky, he would have been able to shake his head left and right to dodge the punch. I'm afraid they have all been beaten to death now. It's all here. If you think it's not enough, I'll go get you more. There's an ATM machine nearby that's open 24 hours a day. I'll give you whatever you want. But what to say to a man? Marx just stood up, took the things, and left silently. Seeing that the surroundings had returned to silence again, the fat and big-eared boss looked around. After making sure there was no one around, he ran a few hundred meters further, standing on the edge of a pool, cursing loudly. "What the hell? If I hadn't gained weight over the years, I would have fought you for 300 rounds. Do you really think I'm a vegetarian? In the past, I was the Cohen brother of the bar street. Don't let me run into you again, or I will destroy you." Then there was a clanging sound nearby, as if something was knocked over by the cat. The fat and big-eared boss trembled with fear. I peed on the spot. He ran out like crazy at lightning speed, using all his strength. He couldn't stop shouting. Don't hit me. I was just talking nonsense. I was wrong, brother. I won't dare to do it again." Chapter 25, I'll give you the money back. 1,000 is enough. Took 30,000 cash from the fat boss. Adding the money he already had on hand, it was almost around 60,000 yuan. The pockets inside were stuffed full. Even items like gold watches could probably be sold for around 10,000. Hurry up and hurry all the way. After crossing the street in the urban village, he finally found Gu Jiejia and stood in front of her. Happened twice in a row. Now he was blocked by Marx. Gu Jiejia said she was not afraid. But that was a lie. Even a fat restaurant owner could bully her, not to mention the psychopathic Marx. What are you going to do? When you pierced my palm when I was a child, it has affected me for the rest of my life. Why do you still want to embarrass me? When I think of my childhood, I saw Marx playing with sand alone. It's quite pitiful. I went there by myself, wanted to be with him. As a result, the other party pierced his palm. My eyes couldn't help but become red again. Her stepfather and mother were not very kind to her. That unbearable past came back to me again. It makes her live in dire straits every day. The girl in front of me was about to cry. Marx, who was standing in front of him, just opened his mouth but was not good at speaking. I don't know what to say. It's just that inexplicable emotion in my heart. He hurriedly took out the money from his pocket, counted out 10 bills, and stuffed them into Gu Jiejia's hand. It seems that it is not enough. He stuffed all the money in his hand in her other hand. Gu Jieji also looked at the money in a daze for a long time. When I looked up again, the person had disappeared. A figure could be seen flashing by at the corner, and then there was no trace of the other person anymore. Let this go, let this go. Gu Jieji looked at the 1,000 yuan in her right hand, and then at the money in her left hand, which was probably about 10 or 20,000 yuan. My head is still buzzing. This guy came out of the mental hospital. What are you going to do? Could it be that he felt that what he had done to her in the past was too much? Want to make amends now? Besides, isn't this 1,000 yuan the money deducted from her by that fat boss? Being timid by nature, she didn't dare to say anything when she was bullied. But there are always some complaints in my heart. Now, someone helped her get the money back. I suddenly had a strange feeling, gently rippling in the heart, like two souls at the lowest level. There is an inexplicable bond in the silence. But soon Gu Jieji shook her head again. If you think you can make it up to me with this little money, Marx, then you are really bullying me. Gu Jieji held the money in her hand tightly, walked forward with red eyes, gradually disappeared into the distance. At this time, Marx returned to the corner of the street, silently watching the girl leave. It felt like something in my heart had been let go, but I didn't let go. I guess he himself felt it was not enough, or it is difficult to make up for it. But now he urgently needs to find a place to have a good rest. I didn't say anything. Then he came downstairs to the house of the strange mother and daughter. The lights were still on upstairs, so he went up to the second floor, knocked on the door. The door creaked open. It's the little girl from last time. Seeing Marx, my eyes lit up. Big brother, are you coming over to stay for a night? I'll just charge you 300 this time. The little girl's voice is loud and clear, with a fox-like smile on his face. Marx didn't waste any words. He took out 300 yuan and stuffed it into the girl's hand, then walked in. Big brother, do you need any other service? My mother is in the next room. But Marx just opened the door from last time. After entering, he locked the door, lay on the bed, and covered his eyes with a baseball cap. I fell asleep without realizing it. The little girl was still standing at the door and said to the crack in the door, Big brother, I will prepare breakfast for you tomorrow. If you have no place to live in the future, you can come here. Next time, I'll charge you a cheaper price, just 200 per night. I saw no one answered. The little girl curled her lips, closed the door outside, and went to her mother's room with 300 yuan. That strange man came again. I charged him $300, but he just walked into the room and fell asleep. The woman in her 20s next to her also came to the windowsill out of curiosity and looked at the figure she could vaguely see. It's really strange. Other men who come to this area spend money to have fun, but he doesn't stay in a hotel. Every time he comes to our place, he falls asleep. Who cares? If he comes every night, even if I charge him 200 yuan for accommodation each time, it will be 5,000 or 6,000 yuan a month. The little girl laughed so happily. With this money, they wouldn't have to go hungry, and they could even buy nice clothes and pay her tuition fees at the same time. She can go back to school happily. The woman didn't understand what was going on. But since the money has been collected, plus the urban villages are a mixed bag, protection fees have to be paid every month, and very few people come to cause trouble, so no one takes the matter to heart. The sky is falling anyway. With the support of a tall man, they're just earning the accommodation fee and have no idea of the other party's true identity. Asleep is night. Perhaps because there was a strange and unfamiliar person next door, the mother and daughter chatted until very late. When I woke up the next day, I had dark circles under my eyes. But I still made a bowl of egg noodles. Seeing Marx coming out, the little girl greeted him happily. Big brother, commandit. My mom made delicious egg noodles. I bought some pork this morning. This bowl is for you. And Marx left before dawn. I didn't expect that I could have breakfast this time. Marx, who was not picky about these things, sat down and began to work hard. He quickly finished all the egg noodles in the bowl. The little girl gave her another bowl. Then Marx gave money to the little girl again, asked him to help prepare a set of clean clothes. He went into the bathroom to take a shower. Soon the little girl came back, because every few stores in the urban villages sell clothes. They're all cheap stuff. The amount ranged from a few dozen to 80 or 90 yuan. Marx gave her 400 yuan, which was more than enough. Putting the clothes at the door, the little girl said to Marx, who was taking a shower inside, "Big brother, just leave the things outside. Just reach out and get them after you take a shower. I bought them all according to your previous style. I have a few more sets left. I'll put them in your room. Next time you come, you can change them directly. Reach out and take the clothes in." After changing, he walked out again. Dry your hair with the hairdryer in the bathroom. Wearing a baseball cap. The tip of the tree is so low that it almost covers the eyes. Go out. He soon arrived at the place where Gu Jiejia sold breakfast yesterday. As expected, Gu Jiejia had already been pulling a small cart filled with various things. There are bread, soy milk, fried dough sticks, and so on. He walked to the side of the stall, his voice low. 4 loaves of bread and a cup of soy milk. Gu Jiejia was bending over and fiddling with the sundries below. Didn't pay attention to the situation ahead. Hear this sound? He first stood up, took 4 loaves of bread and a cup of soy milk, and was about to hand them to Marx. I noticed the other person's appearance. First his eyes widened, then he looked a little panicked. But judging from what happened last night, Marx had no ill intentions. She also learned from the employee group that the boss was beaten up last night. Even though tens of thousands of dollars were robbed, the boss asked them not to make it public because he felt that the man was too vicious. If something really happens, it wouldn't be worth it to risk yourself for a few tens of thousands of dollars. $7, thank you. The girl, Gu Jiejia, bravely began to look at Marx in front of her. Compared to what I looked like when I was a child, Marx now has short hair, wearing a relatively ordinary outfit, but it gives people a sense of sharp edges. He is a little handsome, but not much. Deep down, he gives people a cold feeling, as if he always hides something in his heart. Marx pulled out a $100 bill, handed it over. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, Gu Jiejia stopped him. "I'll give you the change." "No, thanks." "What do you mean you don't need it? And the $1,000 you gave me last night is already enough for my salary. I'll give you the extra money." Gu Jiejia was rummaging for change. He ran up to him and stuffed a large stack of money into his hands. There was also 93 yuan in change mixed in. Marx opened his mouth and looked at Gu Jiejia's delicate face. His heartbeat unconsciously quickened a bit. "Sorry." 3 simple words. It was as if he had used up all his strength. This was the first time he said these 3 words in his life. Gu Jiejia just frowned, went back to the breakfast cart, and continued to organize her things. Waited until Marx turned around before she raised her head and looked at his leaving back with a complicated look in her eyes, but was interrupted by a rough voice. "What are you looking at, you little bastard? Have you finished packing up your things at home? You don't even need to take the steamer, right? Who would buy bread if it's left outside and gets cold?" Immediately afterwards, a pair of big hands slapped Gu Jiejia on the forehead. Gu Jiejia held her head in her hands in pain. "I know, I'll go in and get it." This is a man who looks to be in his 40s. Slondumen. He smelled strongly of cigarettes and alcohol. His hair was a mess. He picked his ears and spat on the ground. I went back to my room and went to sleep. Gu Jiejia held on to her thin clothes, hugged her arms across her chest, and shivered from the cold. Chapter 26. Nanjianka Storm. Leaving the street entrance where breakfast is sold, Mark sent another message to Johnson and waited there for about an hour. Johnson finally arrived. He opened the car door and threw the breakfast over. "Let's go." "Where are you going?" Last night, Johnson used all kinds of methods. He also realized that he could not get the information he wanted after interrogating the woman. "I want to get key information from these minions. It is almost impossible. If you want to know more, you can only get someone with a higher status. Just like the person that is always mentioned in the phone. Go to Nanjianku and take a look at the surrounding terrain and conditions first." Marx reclined his chair and closed his eyes to rest. Johnson, who was driving next to him, understood what he meant. The two of them had the same idea. If only we could control that person. They have plenty of ways to make the other party speak. So, the two came to Nanjianku, and the surroundings looked rather deserted. There is a big bridge in the distance, and after crossing the bridge, you will reach the suburbs. Also because it is relatively remote. This place looks particularly desolate. There are shops around, but none of them are open. The two park the car, and began to check the surrounding situation. Several people in suits were also spotted. I started staring at them from a distance. Another one was holding a telescope in his hand. Then someone left. It seems that they have arranged people here a long time ago. Marx squinted his eyes and checked it several times. Have Johnson drive away and wait until they are far away. The other side of the bridge. A man in sportswear with hawk-like eyes came out and glanced coldly in the direction of Marx and Johnson. Those two people are the mentally ill people that Brother Tang mentioned, and Johnson? The Brother Tang they're talking about is the second in command of Shanghai Construction Group. He is now well known throughout Shanghai City. Whenever there is any demolition task in the surrounding area, the first group to be found is Shanghai Group, who work under Brother Tang. I have experienced countless storms. They didn't expect that dealing with a few people would lead to such a situation. The contact person is dead. Yesterday morning before dawn, he was stabbed in the neck, and the villa was also burned down. Someone also contacted Brother Tang and told us to meet at Nanjiangkou. Even the deception of Johnson was Brother Zhao's idea. Now Johnson obviously knows what happened, and he probably hates us. But the man with the eagle eyes just said gloomily, "Who the hell is Johnson? How dare you help the tyrant in Shanghai City? Arrange your people tonight. Once you find them coming, call me immediately. I really want to try and see what Johnson, one of the 4 Northern Tigers, is capable of." As for Marx, he never took it to heart from beginning to end. He's just a kid from a mental hospital. He dealt with several bodyguards and crippled Miss Zhou, an ordinary person. But in his opinion, these things can be done by anyone with a little ability. He could also destroy Miss Zhou without anyone noticing, without any effort. Could it be that he is also invincible? As the saying goes, there is always someone better than you, and he doesn't think Marx can be that great. There were several men in black suits nearby. He immediately complimented him. "Boss is awesome. You are worthy of being the top fighter." The last time I saw Boss fighting with Green Snake's group, several martial artists couldn't even get past 10 moves in Boss's hands. This time, the boss will take action, so it's a sure win. A burst of praise from the crowd. The hooked man nodded, feeling very pleased. Then they began to arrange manpower. It surrounded the whole place inside and out, hiding behind various shelters, quietly waiting for the arrival of night. Unconsciously, the agreed time has arrived. A bright moon hangs high in the night sky. A silvery white glow enveloped the entire earth. But if you look closely, you can find that the area near Nanjiangkou is full of vaguely hidden figures. Except for these people. In fact, on the other side of the river, there were 2 groups of people quietly watching the situation here. Mr. Liu and Ms. Su, who were discussing Marx and Johnson in the alley earlier. "Master Liu, you have the most people in Shanghai City right now, and you're already in a mess with the local forces, right? Don't you plan to help?" Ms. Su was still wearing a red evening dress. Standing next to the pavilion on the opposite bank, her enchanting figure was particularly eye-catching. Master Liu glanced at the beauty in front of him, but just shook his head. "I'm just playing the long game. See the intersection over there? If you go in from that alley, I'm afraid someone has been waiting for a long time." According to my observation, in addition to the people here, there are quite a few people lying in ambush at the intersection a few streets away. The second in command of Shanghai Group is offering himself as bait. "Do you think he will be unprepared?" Master Liu shrugged. "Although he has a lot of people here. But for the time being, I don't want to confront the local forces head-on. Otherwise, even if he gains benefits, he will suffer heavy losses. In the future, when the time comes to divide the cake, I am afraid there will be no share for him." "But Miss Su, you have a lot of people. Why do you have to keep staring at my little belongings?" Miss Su couldn't help but giggle when she heard this. If Master Liu's family is just a bunch of rags, then I'm afraid the other forces are not even rags. But if these 2 people really die tonight, it will not be good news for us. It's not good news. Master Liu narrowed his eyes. "But we shouldn't be the first to take action. I don't believe that other people don't know about what happened tonight, but only the 2 of us came. Isn't it to watch the fire from the other side and preserve our strength? Even if I withdraw from Shanghai City, I can't risk my life and property to fight them to the death." Master Liu curled his lips and found a place to sit down. Miss Su leaned against the railing of the pavilion, looking leisurely at the shimmering river surface. "I just hope these 2 fools don't take the bait." Same. Marx and Johnson were also looking at the people hiding around them. With their strength, it would be very easy for them to find the hiding person. These minions cannot cause any harm to them. Besides, it is impossible for them to send out only these minions. There are many powerful people in the entire Shanghai City. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many people coveting the prosperity of Shanghai City. Brother Chen, looking at the current situation, even if we go over, it will just be a tough battle, and we won't get any benefits. We can't achieve our goal, so we might as well just go back. Chapter 27. Fierce Battle at the Bridge. Johnson frowned. I feel like giving up. His idea was to catch a guy with a certain status. This is how we interrogate and get more useful clues. But the problem is, there is not even any bait here except the ambushers. If you don't leave now, when will you leave? But in response to Johnson's words, Marx just shook his head. He walked towards the east on his own. In half an hour, you go out to the appointment, and I'll take care of the rest. Johnson was stunned. He was dumbfounded. They set up an ambush, clearly intending to kill them. He even ran out to keep the appointment. Isn't that courting death? Brother Chen, isn't this too risky? Also, should I go alone to the appointment? Even if I have 3 heads and 6 arms, I can't beat so many people. Johnson wanted to say something, but when he turned around, Marx was no longer there. He was so angry that he punched the ground. Damn it, do you think everyone is like you, elusive? If I had your ability, I wouldn't be forced to this point. But Marx was gone. He couldn't rescue his wife and children by himself. If he lost Marx, it would be difficult for him to do things in the future. This bastard, is he trying to kill me? But now that things have come to this guy swears that he must have a way. Do you want to believe him for once? Johnson stood there, clenching his teeth, with an extremely complicated expression. The other side. Marx quietly reached the other side of the river. Not far away, there was a small alley with many people coming in and out. Marx supported himself on both sides of the wall and climbed to a residential building. From the other end of the building, he looked down. Then I saw a black Mercedes parked at the intersection. A younger brother was very respectful, bending over. I didn't know what he said to the car window. He just nodded and bowed, being extremely servile. Is this the bait? Marx narrowed his eyes. He discovered it just now when he was across the river. This alley is often visited by people. The other party has set up a tight net. There can't be no bait. Because in the absence of bait, knowing there was an ambush, who would be stupid enough to be fooled? I just don't know how heavy this bait is. He glanced at the time again. Half an hour has passed. Johnson, who was on the other side of the river, gritted his teeth and said viciously after a while, I trust you once, please don't hurt me. After saying that, he stood up and walked outside. Soon we arrived at the bridge. I'm Johnson, and I'm here to keep my appointment. You're hiding your head and showing your tail. What kind of person are you? Come out and fight me openly if you have the guts. The man with eagle eyes, who had been watching from the other side of the river, was surprised to see that someone actually dared to come out to keep the appointment. He also had a dazed expression and shook his head after a while. He's such a brawny guy. He knew there was an ambush, but he still dared to run out openly. I really don't know why the Wong family and the Zhou family have come to this point. The man with hooked eyes twisted his neck. He didn't show any weakness. He walked towards the bridge by himself, and many people in black suits surrounded him. But the man with eagle eyes raised his hand and gestured. Just stand by and watch. If he dares to come here alone, I will go along with the appointment and fight him. No matter who wins between the two of us. Wait until one of us dies, and then you come up to collect the body. The other party dared to jump out so blatantly. If he doesn't even dare to fight a single round, he doesn't deserve the title of Shanghai Group's gold medal fighter. If you continue to be involved in the underworld, you will easily become the subject of others' laughter after dinner. He couldn't afford to lose face. Over there in the pavilion, looking at all this, Mr. Liu and Miss Su shook their heads with bitter expressions. Even though only one person came, I guess I can't go back. If Johnson and that kid team up and keep hiding in the dark, the Zhou family and the Wong family really won't be able to do anything to them. Even the people behind it would be in a state of panic, but they are just two brainless guys. At this moment, they suddenly felt somewhat fortunate. They did not expose themselves. Otherwise, if they confronted the local forces head-on, it would be a devastating blow to them. Johnson is hopeless. The only one left is the kid from the mental hospital. I don't think he can cause any trouble. Miss Su, you have been urging me to help. Now you see, it's not that I don't want to, but these two people are not worth it. Miss Su was originally quite optimistic about the two of them. Because of their presence, local forces can be restrained. Because of the affairs of these two people, they are still facing counterattacks from local forces. But that kind of counterattack has been much milder. Many people were also assigned to search for news about Marx and Johnson. For example, now, Shanghai Construction Group has mobilized almost 1/3 of its staff. It is precisely because of this that they can take the time to come and watch this great show. Never thought about it. It was a good show, but it was just a joke, and even they couldn't help but shake their heads and smile bitterly. I thought too much. I was hoping that these two people could contain the local forces. Now it seems that they can no longer stir up any waves. Even the man with a mole on his face who had been sitting in the car in the alley got the news. I am also a little speechless. I had originally set up a bait, intending to lure them out using myself. I didn't expect Johnson to be so stupid. But if he had a brain, how could his wife and children be taken away for no reason? I came here for nothing. It's such a waste of time. Everyone around left. They went to the other side of the bridge and surrounded Johnson tightly. Johnson was standing alone on the bridge, and his voice was loud. He suddenly tore off his coat. He revealed his muscular figure and twisted his fist. He looked extremely ferocious. The eagle-eyed man who was walking over from a distance raised the corner of his mouth and threw the short knife tied to his waist to the ground. Johnson, one of the four tigers of the North, known for his unrivaled boxing skills, turned out to be a brainless idiot. But since you are here, I will not let you down. Before I beat you to death, no one around will get close to you. It all depends on whether you have the ability to drag me down with you. Seeing the menacing man in front of him, Johnson took a deep breath, slowly opened his mouth, and suddenly exerted his strength. His muscles bulged and his bones crackled. He pushed his legs back and rushed forward like a human cannonball. The fist that was thrown out was extremely sharp and swept away with a sound of breaking through the air. The man with eagle-hook eyes tilted his body slightly, and after dodging the punch, he began to fight back frantically. The two men fought very quickly, and their punches were so powerful that an ordinary person would die instantly if hit by such a blow. But there were just two of them. During the fight, he took several punches from the opponent but remained calm. They kept passing each other, and sometimes even punched each other. Even though their hands were numb from fighting, neither of them showed any intention of retreating. Marx took a look at the bridge where Johnson was and immediately understood that Johnson's skills were indeed amazing, but he was still not as good as the man with the eagle eyes. If we continue like this, I'm afraid I'll collapse from exhaustion in less than 20 minutes. The man with hooked eyes is not a good person. If he wins the fight, he will certainly not let Johnson go. However, it bought Mark some time. Chapter 28 Showdown was arrested. Everyone around has evacuated, and there are no ambushes on either side. Only the black Mercedes is left. It looks like there should be no problem. Seeing Johnson, he was still trying to buy time for him, but was beaten back step by step. Mark stretched his hands outward, then turned over and jumped down. Then, with a bang, he stepped on the black Mercedes-Benz. Still in the car, the man with a mole on his face was watching the live broadcast of the bridge on his mobile phone. I felt the car body shake, accompanied by the dull sound of a heavy object falling to the ground, and a large part of the roof was dented. Then someone rolled over and smashed the glass with a fist. The fist hit him in the face with terrifying force. A punch knocked his head, causing it to tilt to the left. The glass on the left was broken again, and his head was bleeding immediately. His expression changed again and again, and he knew he had been tricked. On the surface, Johnson came out to keep an appointment. But what is the reality? Johnson is just a draw. The boy who came out of the mental hospital found the car he was in. He even wanted to open the car door and rush through the alley. But from the moment Marx made his move just now, he just knew it. With the opponent's skills, there was no way he could escape from that alley. Coupled with the punch, just now, his head was buzzing and he was no longer able to think about so many things. Driver. Yes, sir. You stop him first. I'll call the people on the other side of the bridge. As long as they come, we can still survive. The driver no longer hesitated, dragged out a steel pipe from the passenger seat, opened the door, and got out. I saw Marx not far away slowly taking out a silver scalpel from his pocket. He waved it at the driver in the distance, and without hesitation, stabbed the man with the mole on his face. Along with a scream, a long bloody mark was cut on the man's shoulder. The smell of blood filled the car, making Marx look even more crazy. The man with the mole on his face also opened the car door at this moment, covering his injured hand. He rushed out and ran to the other side of the alley without looking back. The driver holding the water pipe in front of him glanced at Marx and swallowed hard. Originally wanted to stop Marx, but now he felt like he was being targeted by a monster. My whole body couldn't stop shaking. The courage that I had just summoned up disappeared at this moment. His legs went limp and he fell to his knees. If I hadn't agreed just now, I wouldn't be able to survive if I went back. I won't stop you. I just ask you to let me go. After saying that, he kowtowed 3 times. Just keep your head on the ground. Marx could take his life at any time if he took action. But Marx just walked past the driver indifferently, neither fast nor slow. But she caught up with the man with a mole on his face, until the other person ran out of the alley and shouted. Marx held the silver-white scalpel upside down, pointed it at the back of the man with the mole on his face, and stabbed him hard. 1, 2, 3, 4. The man struggled continuously, but due to excessive blood loss, his voice gradually became weaker, and he fell to the ground with a thud. Marx was covered in blood. He stood opposite the river, his eyes cold and cruel, sweeping over the people around him. He picked up the man who was bleeding on the ground with one hand. The fight on the bridge was also coming to an end at this moment. Johnson was seen on the bridge, beaten beyond recognition. Although the man with the hooked eyes also had bruises all over his body, he was much better than Johnson. Until they heard the screams of the second-in-command of Shanghai group. Everyone turned around in shock and found that the man with the mole on his face had been lifted up by Marx with a silver-white scalpel on his neck. Johnson, who was beaten to the ground and couldn't stop vomiting blood, split his mouth open. Then he realized that this guy wanted to attract other people's fire, so he went to the back to find the person behind the scenes. Now that the helmsman has been captured, no one would dare to take action again unless those present did not care about the other party's life or death. You also know that when that kid came out of the mental hospital, your contact named Lou was killed by him before he could interrogate him for information. I still feel a little regretful. I just don't know if the person who was captured is lucky enough to survive. Johnson stopped pretending. He just lay there in the shape of a big character, with blood oozing out of his teeth uncontrollably. After coughing a few more times, I felt a lot more relaxed. The man with the eagle hook eyes had a terribly dark face. His flesh twitched uncontrollably, and he clenched his teeth as he looked towards where his boss was. Then he said loudly, "Release our boss and write off today's matter. I will return Johnson to you." Unfortunately, Marx did not reply. He simply pushed the man with a mole on his face onto the bluestone handrail, raised the silver-white scalpel, and stabbed him without hesitation. With a whoosh sound, the entire left arm was pierced through. The man with the mole on his face let out a shrill scream. It's like killing a pig. The eagle-eyed man's mouth twitched, and he obviously understood what Johnson meant. If you want to negotiate with a mentally ill person, you must be out of your mind. I can let Johnson go, but if something happens to my boss, not only you two, but even your family will be implicated. Don't think that Johnson's men can protect them. That's because we haven't gotten over another matter yet. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to act so arrogantly in Shanghai City. The man with eagle eyes pulled Johnson up from the ground, then pushed him and signaled him to get out. Then I just stood on the bridge and watched Johnson and Marx meet up and take their boss away. Unable to help himself, his face gradually became hideous. He suddenly kicked the bridge fence next to him and let out a hysterical roar. One day, sooner or later, I will tear you into pieces. But things have come to this. The second-in-command was arrested. If the boss knows about this when we get back, he will eat them alive. Even Mr. Liu and Miss Sue, who were watching all this in the pavilion in the distance, couldn't help but brighten their eyes. They actually caught the kid from the Tang family. This is a big fish. If we can get the Tang family involved, it won't be long before the group of people behind us take action. The current Shanghai City, after all, is still controlled by the 5 people behind the scenes. The last time they came to Shanghai City, he was driven out by those 5 people. Now that they have made a comeback, they don't know whether the methods of those 5 people have become stronger or weaker. According to the information they investigated, those 5 people should be strong inside and out. Once you find out the other party's situation, it is not enough to resist external forces. Then the entire Shanghai City will have to face it. It is shaky, and the building is about to collapse. Chapter 29, Second in Command. The situation changes suddenly. It looks like a violent storm is about to come. These 2 guys really broke the sky and made people look at them with new eyes. Perhaps we can help them appropriately. With their skills, we may be able to recruit them and use them for our own purposes in the future. There was a hint of melancholy on Mr. Liu's old face. After today, I'm afraid there will be a lot of outside forces. They will contact these 2 people and even provide a little help. Without angering the Tang family and those 5 people, they would certainly help if they could. As for Marx's parents, there were outsiders like them. There will be no danger for the time being. Otherwise, why has the hospital been so peaceful since the last attack by Johnson? It's just that the people in the hospital have been replaced by theirs. There are quite a few around, and outsiders are eyeing them covetously. Whether it is the Tang family, the Wong family, or the Zhou family, none of them dare to get involved here easily. However, we still have to pay close attention to the situation in the hospital recently. We cannot rule out the possibility that the Tang family and those 5 people will take risks. Miss Su next to her is now also smiling like a flower, her watery eyes narrowed into crescents. She is so charming. Although the death of Marx's parents and even his sister was equivalent to forcing the kid from the mental hospital into a dead end. But at the same time, without any restraints, the devil in that boy's heart will be completely released. Those behind the scenes must understand this. I won't act easily, but don't be afraid of 10,000 things. Just be prepared for the worst. As for that kid's parents and sister, I heard that the next medical expenses and surgery fees will add up to at least 1 million. Miss Sue, maybe you can go find that guy. Consider this 1 million as a favor. Master Lu looked at the charming woman in Chong Sam standing next to him, but she just shook her head. I'm afraid it won't be my turn. When the time comes, someone will naturally transfer the money to the hospital card. Even if I really go, there will be too many people and the effect will not be obvious. That's right. As Miss Sue, it's really beneath her status to take 1 million to look for that kid. Master Lu didn't say anything else. He turned around and walked outside with his men. He also urgently needed to arrange some things. The Tang family was arrested. It is impossible for the Tang family to sit idly by. The big boss behind Shanghai Group will certainly be furious. As long as the other party gets into chaos and reveals their true colors, they will be like a leech attached to their bones, overturning the entire Shanghai Group and destroying it completely. Shanghai Construction Group, headquarters building. The president's office was extremely luxurious, with animal skins on the floor, famous paintings hanging on the walls, and gold and silver decorations everywhere. In the back, there sat an old man in his 60s, smoking a cigar. When the old man saw the message on the phone, the cigar between his fingers couldn't help shaking and fell onto the expensive carpet next to him. But a big hole was burned in the carpet. He didn't notice it at all. Instead, he slammed the table and stood up. Xiao Tang was arrested? How do these bastards do things? As the head of the Tang family, he actually stooped to be bait. He is simply crazy. Doesn't he know how sensitive his identity is? Those outsiders are now eyeing us covetously. This idiot. The old man in his 60s in front of him gradually turned red in the face and smashed everything around him that could be smashed, accompanied by the sound of tinkling and the old man's roar. The door opened quickly. A woman about 24 or 25 years old walked in. See the scene in front of you. There was also an old man who was gasping for breath with gritted teeth and asked with a look of shock on his face. Chairman, what's wrong with you? Did something big happen? The old man snorted coldly, glanced at the burning cigar next to him, and stepped on it. It's all because of Xiao Tang. Oh no, it's because of what those little princes did some time ago. The secretary was confused. One moment he is talking about Mr. Tang, the next moment he is talking about the little prince. What is going on? Moreover, what the little princes did before. The other party's family is just an ordinary employee, with their omnipotent abilities in Shanghai City. It should have been resolved long ago. That shouldn't be the case, Chairman. Did you make a mistake? Are you mistaken? Those little bastards crippled someone's sister, but they have a son who has just been released from a mental hospital. I don't know where he learned this skill from. Even Johnson, one of the 4 Northern Tigers, was defeated by him. First, he crippled the daughter of the Zhou family, and then he shaved off half of the scalp of that kid from the Wong family. It caused a stir in the city. Now even Xiao Tang has been stabbed several times and has been captured. His whereabouts are unknown. Hearing about Marx's deeds, the secretary in the distance took a deep breath, feeling that it was a bit unbelievable. A kid from a mental hospital. How could it cause such a big storm? Doesn't that kid have a family? Chairman, why don't we? Secretary's words. But the old man in front of him snorted again. Wasn't the previous Johnson arranged by Xiao Tang? After Johnson, there were many other good players in the underworld. But what happened? To this day, their whereabouts are still unknown. They must have been drowned long ago. Ever since the outsiders returned a month ago, the entire Shanghai city has never been peaceful. Now, there is another uncertain factor. The 2 dogs of the Wong family and the Zhou family are both scared. If we let that kid do whatever he wants again, if he dares to arrest Xiao Tang today, he will dare to attack me tomorrow. Will he have to go to the Tang family and kill people the day after tomorrow? The more the secretary listened, the more frightened he became. I vaguely felt that the situation was getting out of control. At the hospital, There were outsiders interfering. The martial arts masters sent out all ended up in failure. Now, even the Tang family is involved. Outsiders will definitely not let go of this opportunity. The hospital will be surrounded by crowds. It would be difficult for them to take action. As for that mentally ill kid, elusive. Who knows what he will do? Besides, if you try to reason with a mentally ill person, will he listen? The more I thought about it, the more frightened I felt. The old man in his 60s glanced at the secretary and knew that she was frightened. He immediately comforted her. Don't worry, even though there are many outsiders and they have been making a lot of noise recently. This is our territory after all. Come here, I've been feeling a bit irritated lately. Help me cool down. The old man closed his eyes and opened them again. But he was already looking out the window. That was the brightly lit Shanghai city. It is also one of the most prosperous cities in the country, and countless bones are buried here. It is the fat meat that countless people are salivating over. As long as there is a chance, those people couldn't wait to have a bite. Recently, something is wrong with the Southern School. It seems that we have to go to the villa. As 30 seconds passed, the secretary opened the door and left. He just held a ball of paper in his hand, covered his mouth, and walked into the bathroom. Don't criticize me, I don't have a knife, my sister can't do it, don't worry, I've changed it. Chapter 30. Tang family takes action, sweep away the entire Shanghai city. Everything started to get chaotic because the head of the Tang family was arrested. Countless figures in black suits can be seen everywhere. Various streets. Psychopath. A carpet search was conducted, sweeping across this already not so peaceful city like a violent storm. There are even venues with many outsiders. They were all wiped out. Even the hospital that injured that night. The number of cases is increasing rapidly. In the East and South districts, all 5 hospitals are full. Some had injured their arms, some were knocked unconscious on the spot, and there were even several muscular men sitting in the corridor, covering their hands with something. His face was particularly gloomy. Tonight, the Tang family took action. The 2 footholds we just established were swept away by the Tang family. A total of 35 people were injured, and 21 lost their ability to fight. The man with muscular body and stubble on his face is called Chen Xiao. He is also one of the 4 tigers of the north and is as famous as Johnson. His leg techniques are extremely famous throughout the north. Even when Johnson faced him, he couldn't say that he was 100% sure of winning. But tonight, he encountered a tough enemy. After more than 20 rounds of fighting, he was knocked down by the opponent's sweeping kick. If it weren't for a few of his men, who desperately stopped the man and took him away, it would be a question whether he could be alive now. In addition to Chen Xiao, there are many people from other forces here. 2 of them, 1 man and 1 woman, came to Chen Xiao's side. Johnson and a kid from a mental hospital at around 11 o'clock. His whereabouts are still unknown, but he was stabbed more than a dozen times. If he hadn't received timely treatment, he would probably be dead now. These 2 men and 1 woman are not from Chen Xiao's faction. But now, the Tang family began an indiscriminate sweep. No matter whether it was the previous faction or the faction that entered Shanghai City later, they were all within their target group. As a result, all external forces in the entire Shanghai City suffered unprecedented heavy losses. Chen Xiao said, Master Liu, what do you think about Miss Su? Master Liu and Miss Su are in charge of the South District. With such a big incident, won't they come forward to take care of it? The 2 men and 1 woman who came over said with a cold face. How can we manage it? Just half an hour ago, the shopping mall newly built by Master Liu was burned down by someone. Many people gathered at the second hospital. I'm afraid there is a melee over there. Speaking of the second hospital, Chen Xiao was also stunned for a moment. If he remembered correctly, the mentally ill boy, his parents and sister were in the second hospital. Once the second hospital was lost, the people inside would probably suffer unprecedented damage. Why not just let those people occupy the hospital? Now they're causing a stir because of a mentally ill family member. I spent so much effort and money to build a bar, but now it's ruined. I've wasted more than $10 million. Besides, those 2 old guys in the hospital and his sister are dead. The kid who came out of the mental hospital will become even more unscrupulous. Sure enough, said the girl among the 2 men and 1 woman who came over. The 4 northern tigers are all just brains with muscles. They are now fighting fiercely with the local forces in Shanghai City. They are just some small fish and shrimps on the surface. The people in the dark haven't made any move yet. If we really let that kid do something crazy, the situation won't be as simple as it is now. What's more, during this period of time, the area around the second hospital is full of our outsiders. I'm afraid the other party has already tied that kid to us. Once that kid is freed, he will be like a tiger coming down the mountain. You have seen during this period of time that both the Zhou family and the Wong family have sent out a lot of people, but they can't even find any trace of that kid. Now that the Tang family has also taken action, they are no match for the Zhou and Wong families. What's the result? So far, they haven't found anything. From this, we can see that the boy is definitely not comparable to ordinary people in terms of hiding and attacking. His parents can still control him, but if his parents are dead, he will be a devil crawling out of hell. Can you be sure what he will do? I'm afraid even the Tang family themselves can't guarantee that they can live safely in the future. Even the two men next to him agreed with this. Not to mention the Wong family and the Zhou family. They have also dispatched a lot of manpower during this period. But that kid was so elusive that he could avoid all the cameras every time, as if he was born with the ability to sense these things. Besides, even if that kid entered the hospital in public, that was also silent. By the time they found out, everyone was gone. Such a ghost-like character. Also suffers from mental illness. If you can't control your emotions, once things get out of control, it won't be as simple as just getting hurt now. We don't know how many people will die. If it's as dangerous as you say, why did the Tang family send people to attack the hospital? The girl rolled her eyes. Is it possible that they just think there are too many outsiders, so they want to clean them up? Before we catch that kid, the Tang family dare not push too hard. Otherwise, the dog will jump over the wall, and the Tang family will not be able to bear it. Chun Xiao frowned. It's been so long since that kid's incident. I still don't know who hurt his sister. But the two men and one woman just narrowed their eyes and shook their heads. Some things are hidden too tightly by the other party. There is no doubt that they are related to the 5 people mentioned above. We don't know who they are specifically involved in. It seems that things have come to a stalemate here. Chun Xiao had no choice but to invest more than 10 million yuan, and now it was all gone. He felt extremely heartbroken, as this was almost all his belongings, and this time he was bewitched by those people above him. He came here from far away, but ended up getting nothing in return and instead pushed himself into a desperate situation. The forces of the outsiders have been wiped out, and a large number of small forces have been left with nowhere to go. It's inevitable that we will fight back desperately. Chun Xiao, after all, you are one of the 4 tigers of the north. How about we join forces? At least you can survive this storm and get a share of the profits. Otherwise, such a huge investment will go down the drain. Can you swallow this? 2 men and 1 woman stated the purpose of their trip. Chun Xiao frowned and took a deep breath, knowing that he would not be able to handle the Tang family's next move on his own. He nodded with a gloomy face. Since you are all interested, I can't refuse. In the next half-month, perhaps only by joining forces can we have a chance of survival. Chapter 31, his status is too heavy, and it is hard to breathe. The Tang family took action. Even the newly opened shopping mall of Luyi in the South District was burned down. Logically speaking, this incident was undoubtedly a slap in the face of Master Lu, and also an attempt to force outsiders to submit. But unfortunately, on the top floor of a tall building, in the luxurious presidential suite, Master Lu and several younger generations from northern families were sitting in the hall, chatting happily. Although the shopping mall was burned down this time, the person in charge of the Tang family was arrested, which invisibly dealt a blow to the prestige of the Tang family. If the Tang family can't find the murderer, no matter how serious the incident is this time, it is an unprecedented blow to the Tang family. Even Shanghai Construction Group has become the target of everyone's criticism. This is one of the Tang family's sharpest minions. The Wong family and the Zhou family, these 2 dogs, are nothing compared to Shanghai Construction Group. If we can take down Shanghai Construction Group, what will this loss be? The Tang family has already taken action. Miss Su and I met an hour ago. Everyone should know that the reason why the Tang family went crazy this time is because their leader in Shanghai Construction Group was stabbed more than a dozen times, and his whereabouts are still unknown. Master Lu looked at these youngsters with a smile on his face. The mall burned down. Not angry at all, but full of joy. It seems like something good is about to happen. The 5 youngsters who came over are all from the most powerful factions in their respective regions. Although they only sent young people here, it was enough to show their sincerity. I think your elders have also seen that the Tang family is weak inside and strong outside. Now they can't even catch a kid from a mental hospital in Johnson. If the Tang family can't give an explanation, I'm afraid the forces below will start to become disunited. Once suspicion arises between the 2 sides, it will be our time to attack the Tang family's business. In the past Shanghai city, All the local forces were united as one and extremely xenophobic. It is like a fool's dream for these people to come in and get a piece of the pie. In fact, they had no hope when they came this time. That Marx would appear as a variable? Just one person has pushed the entire Shanghai city to the forefront. At first, it was the Wong family and the Zhou family, and they didn't care much. But now even the Tang family is involved. Then the person in charge of Shanghai Construction Group was arrested, which undoubtedly told others. The Tang family is no longer viable. They may not be able to bear it any longer. If you want to survive safely in this vortex, once the Tang family falls, you will have to choose a new force to rely on. As long as they lose their composure, the rest will be easy. Master Lu. My father told me when he came here that everything will be arranged by Master Lu. I brought more than 20 people with me. They are all the best in the family. Their fighting power should not be underestimated. Master Lu will be in charge of everything. As for our Miao family, as long as Master Lu asks, we are willing to serve you. Our Lu family is no pushover. The Tang family did go too far this time. The people under our Lu family are complaining and have suffered heavy losses. Seeing everyone's positive attitude, Master Lu couldn't help but burst out laughing. Okay, that's great. Tang Tiansheng is already old, and the Tang family has been occupying Shanghai City for many years. It's time for them to make way for us. At the same time, outside Shanghai City, on a small path, the black Mercedes is sprinting at full speed. There was a large dent in the roof. The rear window was also shattered. The wind howled in, and there were many obstacles around. But the driver seemed not to see it. It's just right every time, and I avoid these things. Johnson, who was sitting in the passenger seat, also asked the name of the person behind him on the way here. When Johnson heard the name Tang Hao, his heart trembled violently. He thought about catching a big fish, but I didn't expect the fish to be so big. Tang Hao, the official head of the Tang family. At the age of 31, he is the strategist behind Shanghai Construction Group. He has helped Shanghai Construction Group turn crises into safety many times without the help of the Tang family. Without even taking advantage of the Tang family's power, he conquered countless territories for Shanghai Construction Group, which was once very prosperous in Shanghai City. More importantly, Tang Hao's wife is an important hub in the Tang family's faction in Beijing. If something happens to Tang Hao, whether it is Shanghai Construction Group, the Tang family, or even the many forces below, they will probably fall into madness. The consequences are simply too great. Looking at Tang Hao, who is still bleeding, dying, and pale, as if he would die at any time. Johnson's mouth twitched as well. Brother Chin, why don't you stop the car first? If this person dies, the consequences will be disastrous. But Marx just glanced back and said in a heavy tone, he won't die for now. Every time I strike him with my sword, I avoid his vital parts. He can still hold on for at least 10 minutes. Hear what he said. Johnson opened his mouth. He couldn't die now. He was also holding his breath. But once we reach the destination, without enough medical equipment, can we really save this person? Originally, he really wanted to capture someone with a pretty good status and position. Get more important information, but the problem is when he knows that this person is Tang Hao. Johnson felt a little regretful. It would be fine for others, but Tang Hao was involved in the interests of the entire Tang family, and it also caused a tense situation in Shanghai City. If you are not careful, you will get burned if you play with fire. Even if he rescued his wife and children, it would be a question whether he could leave Shanghai City alive. So, deep down in his heart, he didn't want Tang Hao to die here. Brother, this person's status is too important. It's easy to overwhelm people. If we don't deal with it in time, and he dies, the day will really fall. Marx still didn't stop the car. When he was in the mental hospital, he had upgraded all his skills to the maximum level. With just a glance, he had a general understanding of the man's injuries. With his ability, even without important equipment, he can still pull this person out of the brink of death. What's more, he bought a lot of medical supplies in the abandoned factory last time, so he didn't take it seriously. Johnson, next to him, didn't understand. Looking at the cold and almost emotionless face in front of him, the corners of his mouth twitched violently. I feel like I'm talking to a mentally ill person, and it's like talking to a cow about big principles. I'm afraid that in Marx's heart, he doesn't realize how serious the matter is. Subconsciously, Johnson took out his cell phone. As an outsider, he more or less has his own channels for obtaining information. After arresting Tang Hao, he probably expected that the Tang family would be furious. But when he held the phone and saw the numerous messages in it, he couldn't help but feel his scalp tingling and goosebumps appeared. Chapter 32. Scholar meets soldier. There are countless messages in the mobile phone. They all asked him whether Tang Hao was dead or alive. Only a small part told him that the outside forces were being swept away indiscriminately, and nearly 60% of the forces had suffered damage. Such a large-scale action would not even hesitate to force the outside forces into a desperate situation. From this we can see how crazy the Tang family is now. Brother Chun, this may have blown the lid off. Johnson's voice trembled. Marx, who was driving, still had a cold look on his face, without any emotion, as if he was listening to some trivial matter. Sky? What is the sky? If those who hurt his sister. This is the sky of Shanghai City. Even if it is exposed, what does it matter? They can bully their sister. Then he also has his own way to make those who are high and mighty bend down and listen quietly to the sorrow. If we have to say who brought the disaster, then Marx can tell them responsibly. Their own sister is a disaster, and their own family is their nightmare. Even Tang Hao, who was standing behind him, had slowly woken up. He had many wounds on his body, and blood was still flowing out slowly. He felt extremely weak, and the pain from his wounds made him gasp for air, even when he moved his fingers slightly. The wounds seemed to be affected, and beads of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. He glanced at the person driving the car. His pupils contracted slightly, and he remembered the scene where he was pushed onto the bluestone fence by the river. Thinking of this kid swinging his knife, almost crazily, I felt a chill down my spine and a sense of depression that I couldn't vent to. Because according to the situation at that time, this kid really wanted to kill him. Of course he doesn't know. Marx has already controlled the position of his knife. After all, with the knife being drawn so quickly, who can tell what this psychopath is trying to do? Let me go. I can make the Tang family stop. As long as you let me go, I can let those two guys from the Wong and Zhou families come out to pay for your sister's life. But if I really die, not only you, but also your sister and family will all be buried with me. Tang Hao didn't know whether the other party could listen to him. After all, it is probably too small to expect a mentally ill person to be rational. He just knew. The only reason this mentally ill man still has shackles on his body is that his parents and sister are still alive. As long as this guy isn't caught in one day, they don't dare to push the other party too hard, especially after seeing Marx's methods today. Even Tang Hao couldn't help but feel chilled. Forget about the others. With their means, coercion, inducement, and 100 ways to make those people surrender, they would commit. Just like Johnson in the co-pilot seat, just a few words from him could make the other party take risks. But unfortunately, Marx is not a normal person. He is a complete madman. He is capable of doing anything. No one dares to bet whether this guy is sensible or not. Originally, Tang Hao said these words to test Marx and also to let the other party know his identity. But Johnson, who was standing next to him, knew that something was wrong when he heard Tang Hao mention Marx's sister and family. Along with the urgent sound of brakes, a silver-white scalpel was quietly pulled out. Johnson was so frightened that his face turned pale. He couldn't help swallowing his saliva and rushed over quickly. It blocked in front of Tang Hao, and then there was a puff sound. Johnson's back was immediately cut. If Johnson hadn't reacted quickly, Tang Hao's throat would have been cut off. Tang Hao did not expect that the opponent would attack without warning. Even before he could react, the silver-white scalpel had already swept towards him. He is indeed a madman. He didn't listen to anything I said. Just heard it. He threatened his parents and sister. Brother Chun, calm down. He can't die yet. You have to get more useful information. And the 5 people who hurt your sister haven't been found yet, right? Johnson endured the pain and kept warning Marx, hoping that he would regain his sanity. Otherwise, once Tang Hao died, the situation would be truly irreversible. Tang Hao himself was also scared half to death. Johnson tightly. You should know the consequences. Control this lunatic. Otherwise, if I die, you and your wife and children will not be able to leave Shanghai City. Johnson also hated the man in front of him, but he knew that this person could not die. At least not now. He carefully climbed up from Tang Hao's body. He reached out and grasped the silver scalpel. He also held Marx's hand and pressed it down a little bit. We finally managed to capture this person. If he dies, how can we get more information? Brother Chin, be rational, be rational. Don't be impulsive. Following Johnson's exhorting voice and his hand pressing down slightly, Marx finally glanced coldly at Tang Hao and finally put the scalpel on his waist. Both Johnson and Tang Hao breathed a sigh of relief at this moment, and Tang Hao didn't dare to say anything more. I was afraid that I would say a wrong word and make this madman angry again. Now he finally understood that if he tried to reason with a madman, he could be killed at any time. When he was at Shanghai Construction Group, he was in charge of all the affairs. As long as he wanted to, he could control the lives and deaths of countless people. He grasped human nature to the extreme. He holds the power of life and death over countless people. With the power of one person alone, Shanghai Construction Group can become a well-known presence in Shanghai City. It's because of his control over human nature and his own strategic mind. But now, it is such a top think tank within Shanghai Construction Group, but now he feels deeply powerless. Everything I was once proud of, in front of this madman, I become useless. Even if he dared to say one more word, it would be a question whether Johnson next to him could stop him. No matter who you replace me with, even if it's the leader of the outsiders, I have 100 ways to deal with it. But why? He has to be a madman. Tang Hao clenched his teeth, feeling his head was in a mess. He used to be so powerful that he thought he could handle anyone with ease. Now my mind is just blank. It's like it's down. Johnson, who was in the passenger seat, smiled bitterly. I advise you to say less. Last time, that guy surnamed Liu had his throat slashed just because of a disagreement. Your words and methods may be useful to me, but for Brother Chin, I advise you to take it easy. Chapter 33, Changing Positions. The car drove quickly to the abandoned factory. Marx took out something else and bandaged Tang Hao's wound. The wound was sutured even without anesthesia, even though Tang Hao kept struggling and screaming in the process. Marx's needle insertion technique is still fast and steady. Johnson, who was standing next to him, twitched his mouth. After everything was done, Tang Hao had passed out from the pain. Sun Yaodong, the driver, the investigator, the mistress, and even Johnson, who were present, all swallowed subconsciously. The life was saved. But the pain that one has to endure along the way is enough to make one's scalp tingle just thinking about it. And during the whole process, Marx seemed to slow down the acupuncture speed intentionally or unintentionally. Enjoy this bloody process extremely. They could sense that Marx would sometimes deliberately open his wounds, watching the blood flowing out. The restlessness in his eyes could no longer be concealed. Johnson was even afraid that while he was stitching up the wound, Marx would suddenly go crazy and kill him. Fortunately, during this process, although Marx enjoyed it very much, especially when he saw Tang Hao, he let out a shrill scream. He licked his lips excitedly, as if a demon crawling out of hell. But after all the torture, Tang Hao saved his life. It's getting late now. Although this factory is far from the city, it's still not safe. We've been here for too long and left a lot of traces. Looking at the blood in his hand, Marx took a deep breath. The smell of blood filled the air, showing his white teeth, and said, "It's time to change places." Regarding Marx's proposal, Johnson naturally had no objection. He quickly tied the man up and forced him into the car. They followed the deserted road before them and continued forward, and after they left. In less than an hour, in the pitch-black night, many lights were lit up, surrounding the entire dilapidated factory area. More and more people are gathering here. Figures in black suits broke into the dilapidated factory area. But after searching again and again, I still couldn't find anyone. It was not until an old man in his 60s, smoking a cigar, walked in under the respectful gazes of everyone that people began to come forward to report. "Chairman, we found a lot of blood next to the innermost pillar. There is also a broken rope and a chain used to tie up the dog. It looks like the person must have left." Hearing that everyone had left, the old man with a cigar in his mouth. He clenched his teeth, his eyes, which were already a little red from staying up late. There was even a hint of coldness in his eyes. "The Tang family has issued an order. If we can't find the person who took Tang Hao away, we will be the ones to pay for it. No matter where they run to, if you can't find them, don't blame me for being cruel." Now he was also forced into a corner. As the head of Shanghai Construction Group, he was the first to know that Tang Hao had been arrested. At that time, he could already imagine that the Tang family would be furious because of this, but he never thought that things would escalate to this point. Not only did the outsiders suffer, but they also continued to put pressure on him. If Marx couldn't be found, and Tang Hao couldn't be saved, I'm afraid the Tang family will really use him as a sacrifice. In the past half-month, the extremely powerful outsiders have begun to bow their heads under the oppression of the Tang family. You should be able to imagine what the consequences will be when the Tang family's wrath descends. It was okay before, but this time, we can't afford to make any mistakes. The old man's voice was sharp and cruel. Everyone present also felt a chill. It goes without saying how terrifying the Tang family's power is in Shanghai City. They are all vested interests of Shanghai Construction Group, and if they cannot play their due role at this time, then the things they had done were enough to send them all to jail. Looking back, it would be a pipe dream to rely on the giant Shanghai Construction Group to live a life of luxury. Chairman, rest assured, we will do our best to rescue Mr. Tang. After saying that, everyone left one after another. Only the old man was left, gritting his teeth. Looking at the black clouds gradually clearing outside and the bright moonlight, I took a deep breath. I hope they won't be impulsive. The implications are too great. Now the Tang family. I'm afraid they've already made up their minds to fight to the bitter end because they don't get an explanation. I'm afraid those people below will really get into chaos. Being at the center of the storm, Wu Jingyang was also quite helpless. I just want to resolve this matter quickly. At least rescue Tang Hao. Only in this way can the storm in Shanghai City be calmed down. Driving all the way. Before they knew it, they arrived at a village that had been abandoned for who knows how many years. There are many houses around here that are made of yellow mud bricks. It is covered with tiles. Because they are so old, many houses have collapsed. The little that remains is not enough to shelter from the wind and rain. Fortunately, behind this abandoned village are several long mountains, and on the top of the mountains there are a few red brick houses left behind by forest rangers. This provides them with a natural shelter. So, under Marx's coercion, everyone came to the hidden red brick house on the mountain. The water pipes here can still release water. It's just that the electrical appliances are no longer powered. The door is still in good condition. If you prop it up with something, it can still be used to block the wind. There are just a lot of signs around saying, be careful of brown bears and other ferocious animals. It doesn't look very safe. Marx exhaled slowly. After looking at the still unconscious Tang Hao, he tied up the driver, the investigator, Johnson, and the mistress again. He walked down the mountain by himself. There were still a lot of medical bandages and supplies in the car. It must be brought up, otherwise it would be a waste. But just as he arrived next to the Mercedes-Benz with the dented roof. But then I heard a bang from the trunk. Then the trunk door opened by itself. Marx walked to the trunk with a silver scalpel. I saw a woman of about 24 or 25 years old inside. She was tied up and had a piece of cloth stuffed in her mouth. She tried to speak, but could only make choking, sobbing sounds. The woman was extremely beautiful. Although she was about 24 or 25 years old, she exuded a mature and gorgeous beauty. She had a curvy figure and a pair of slender legs which, due to limited space, were bent together against her belly. There was a hint of clarity in her beautiful, tender eyes as she saw someone next to her, holding a silver scalpel. The woman showed a trace of panic, and as she struggled, there was a ripping sound, and the extremely tight white shirt on her back was torn. Marx reached out and pulled the cloth out of the woman's mouth, and the woman finally spoke. No, don't kill me. I won't tell anyone about this. Just let me go home, and I can give you money. Lots and lots of money. The woman didn't look like someone who was short of money. She had a jewel necklace around her neck that was worth a lot of money. The watch on the wrist also looks particularly delicate, covered with densely packed diamonds. Just this rose-colored lady's watch. I'm afraid the value is over 100,000. Mark stepped forward and untied the woman. The woman quickly climbed out of the trunk and said pleadingly, I know you must be Tang Hao's man, but you are helping Tang Hao to make money. If you sell my watch, it will cost at least 200,000. And the gemstone necklace on my neck was bought by my cousin at an auction for 2.58 million. If you sell it anywhere, you can at least get back around 1 million. Chapter 34, There's Another Woman. The woman's eyes were filled with fear, because when Marx stared at her, she felt as if she was being stared at by a monster. This kind of gaze is very cold. It was extremely cold. It's like a poisonous snake that can give you a fatal blow at any time. Marx didn't say anything. He just took the things from the car and walked up the mountain by himself. The woman looked around, and when she saw that Marx ignored her, she wanted to turn around and run away. But after walking around for a few times, she found that this was just a desolate mountain range, with endless mountains behind it. In the abandoned village, there is still a large blue stone with the 3 words Baiyang Village clearly carved on it. She didn't know what Baiyang Village was, but she knew that she had to live alone and had nothing to eat. Wanting to leave this desolate wilderness is simply a fantasy. Now the sky is getting darker and darker. From time to time, there were wolf howls around. The woman was so frightened that she was shaking and ran desperately towards the houses on the mountain where there were faint lights of fire. Finally, half an hour later, she arrived at the door of the house. Her clothes were torn by the branches on the road because she ran too fast. Through the torn clothes, you can vaguely see the snow-white skin and a dozen tiny wounds. I am Scotted down there alone. Big brother, can you take me back tomorrow morning? I'll give you any amount of money you want. The woman stood at the door, clasping her hands to her chest, biting her red lips, looking very charming and seductive. There was a fire in the room. Johnson turned his head to look at the woman, then looked at Marx with a strange expression, but Marx did not explain, still warming himself by the fire in the room. But the woman saw Tang Hao tied in a corner, his body covered in blood. I couldn't help but let my pupils shrink and revealed an incredible expression. Aren't you Tang Hao's men? At this time, Johnson finally understood. It seems that this woman was captured by Tang Hao and was most likely locked in the trunk. As a result, when Marx went down, he found this woman. After all, the only place in that Mercedes-Benz car where someone could hide was the trunk. We are Tang Hao's enemy, so we captured him, Johnson said. He took another piece of compressed biscuit from the side and a small bottle of mineral water, handed to the woman. The woman heard that it was Tang Hao's enemy. Tang Hao was tied up and lying on the ground. He was seriously injured and has been unconscious ever since. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief. As long as the two in front of him are not Tang Hao's men, then she shouldn't be in too much danger. My name is Ning Yaoshu. Can you send me back to Shanghai City tomorrow morning? I will give you 10 million as a reward for saving my life. 10 million. Johnson was a little shocked, especially when I saw this woman. She didn't even blink when she said 10 million. You know that these 10 million is nothing to them. Marx also turned his head to look at the beautiful woman, although he had no idea about money. But when he was in the mental hospital, his attending physician was willing to kill him for $500,000. With this conversion, he knew what the money represented. It's impossible to go back. I'm afraid we are being hunted by the entire Shanghai city. Marx's voice was cold. It doesn't have any emotion at all. It's like a machine, making people feel suffocated, especially in such a dim environment. The firelight illuminated his face, but his head was lowered. There was an inexplicable sense of urgency that made the woman swallow subconsciously. I also understood what was going on. After all, Tang Hao was captured by them. The Tang family will definitely be furious, and the entire Shanghai city will be swept by huge waves in this storm. She really couldn't imagine how these two people had the guts to capture Tang Hao. Yes, miss. I'm afraid we won't be returning to Shanghai City in the short term, at least for 3 to 5 days. Johnson also whispered beside him. His cell phone can still be used to contact his subordinates. I know a little about the situation in Shanghai City. If I want to go back, I'm afraid only Marx has the ability to do so. But now, whether it is the Tang family, Shanghai Construction Group, or even the many forces below, they are all eyeing covetously. There's no need to take the risk. Well, can you send me back in 3 to 5 days? Then I'll write you a check for 10 million, and you can cash it at any bank. Marx glanced at the woman and said nothing. Johnson did not say anything because without Marx's consent, he could not guarantee it. In this quiet environment, a long time passed by unknowingly. The woman didn't ask any further questions, and Johnson didn't say anything. They just took turns sleeping and then continued to keep watch after getting up. Until dawn, everyone ate up the little remaining food. Johnson saw that if he didn't do something, he might starve to death here. So he stood up and said, I'll go back to Shanghai City and ask my men to send some food out. Otherwise, we'll have to go hungry for the next meal. Marx picked up his own silver-white scalpel, went up the mountain alone. Johnson was stunned and immediately realized that Marx was planning to go up the mountain to find food by himself. But this is a desolate wilderness surrounded by mountains. It is not easy for people who have no outdoor experience to get something to eat. Johnson, whose face was full of fat and hair, and stood up in fright. Following in Marx's footsteps, she felt that the young Marx was more reassuring than following Johnson. Although Marx's eyes gave her a cold feeling, they were pure and had no other thoughts. But it's hard to say about Johnson right now. As if he knew that Ning Yaoshu was afraid that he would do something wrong, Johnson was still speechless. Are you thinking that you are not as good as a madman? How could anyone think that being around a bloody madman would be safer than being around him? But everyone has already gone out. He didn't know what to say, lest people think he really had ulterior motives. As for Marx, he held the silver scalpel. The pace is fast. He had no intention of waiting for anyone, even though Ning Miaoshu, who was following behind him, begged desperately. Marx still didn't look back. Marx, who was like a machine, without any sympathy for women, and felt a little speechless, not knowing what to say. Until the two of them walked to the edge of a lake, Marx began to take off his clothes. Then with a splash, he jumped into the water. After more than a minute, blood bubbles were seen in the water, and then Marx was seen swimming to the shore, dragging a catfish with a pierced head. This catfish weighs at least 4 or 5 kilograms. Very big. It was also enough for them to have a lunch. But there were too many of them, and even if they ate the fish, they still had no idea where their next meal would come from. But very quickly, she found out she was wrong. On the way back, Marx caught 2 more rabbits and a weasel. It's time for lunch. Whether it was her, the 4 people who were tied up, or Tang Hao who had just woken up, they only got a small amount of food. Marx and Johnson ate almost the entire fish. As for the 2 rabbits and weasels that they caught, they were cleaned and made into bacon. It was obvious that the 2 of them wanted to have them as dinner. As for the rest of the people, whether they would have food to eat in the evening was not something Marx considered. Chapter 35 Return to Shanghai City. In the next few days, Marx went into the mountains to find food. As for Johnson, he was responsible for interrogating Tang Hao. Although it only took 3 days, I was able to get a lot of useful information. But Marx was still not satisfied. That evening, Tang Hao was tied to a water pipe. Marx held a silver scalpel. He stared at Tang Hao quietly for a long time. Whenever Tang Hao was interrogated, the question came to the point of those 5 people. Tang Hao always avoided the question. No matter what methods Johnson used, he could never get to the bottom of the matter. The long-accumulated depression had already made Marx somewhat manic and restless. Plus, I haven't taken any tranquilizers recently. Let this feeling intensify. At first, Ning Miaoshu will follow Marx into the mountains. We have witnessed Marx's almost crazy methods several times. She was also scared. That is, 2 days ago, until the afternoon, she no longer followed Marx and ran to the mountains. Now that Johnson couldn't get the truth from the interrogation, Marx had to take over. That evening, howling of pain, a shrill scream, the almost desperate cry echoed throughout the mountains and fields. The birds and beasts flew away in fright, and the chirping of insects disappeared. The only sound left was Tang Hao's almost pleading and wailing voice, echoing in the cold and windy night. Please, please kill me. As long as it's not about those 5 people, I can tell you everything. If you must ask, can you please give me a quick death? This was his last plea. There is no color of life in his eyes. His body was covered in blood and had many hideous scars, making Tang Hao in front of him look like a ghost. Only Marx, holding the blood-stained scalpel, breathed a long sigh of relief. It was as if the violence had been pinned up in my heart. At this moment, it was finally suppressed. He really enjoyed this wonderful process. It's like carefully carving a piece of art. Every cut is just right. It hurts extremely, but doesn't cause too much damage. He would also bandage Tang Hao's wounds carefully. The bleeding was stopped, but the inhumane torture continued. Whether it was the tied-up Johnson, the driver, the investigator, or the mistress, or maybe Johnson and Ning Miaoshu, who were watching nearby, were both horrified by this method. During the whole process, Ning Miaoshu and her mistress were kidnapped, and she even had a mental breakdown at one point. If Johnson hadn't locked the door tightly, who knows what else is going to happen? The sky was getting dimly lit. He restrained the violent marks in his heart. Looking at the scarred Tang Hao, he seemed very satisfied with his masterpiece. Tang Hao was also in agony and passed out, although he did not obtain much useful information. But from Tang Hao's nonsense, he got an important message. That is to hurt my sister. And among the 5 hidden people, one of them has a particularly delicate voice, just like a girl's. But he is a genuine man, and from that chaotic tone, he also got a name called Heaven and Earth. It seemed to be an entertainment club, but he asked Johnson and Ning Miaoshu, who was next to him. But no one knows where this paradise is. The voice is delicate, but it's a man's. There must be some unknown clues in Heaven and Earth. Marx pondered over these 2 important pieces of information. He did not wake Tang Hao up and continued to torture him. Because he knew that slow progress would take time, Tang Hao's body was now on the verge of collapse. If we continue like this, it will only fulfill Tang Hao's wishes. After all, after what happened last night, Tang Hao now wants to die. But now Marx doesn't want him to die. I want to go back to Shanghai City. Marx's voice fell. Ning Miaoshu, who was standing next to her, showed an expression of inexplicable surprise. Take me back. I can pay any price. Besides, my father has already chosen the wrong side, and there is no way he can turn back now. Otherwise, Tang Hao wouldn't want to kill me. Just let me go back, and I can help you. After all, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. There was a hint of anticipation in Ning Miaoshu's eyes, just as she said, although she is from the Beijing school. But the Beijing faction was also full of struggles. Some people sided with the Tang family, some sided with the outsiders, and their Ning family stood on the side of the outsiders. He wants to tear apart the local forces in Shanghai City and get a piece of the pie. Because of this, when she and her father arrived in Shanghai City the next day, she was caught when she went out. According to Tang Hao's original idea, he probably wanted to use himself to threaten his father, but unfortunately he met Marx, which caused all his plans to fail. Even the mistress who was tied up in the corner seemed to remember something. You are Miss Ning? I was wondering why you looked so familiar when I saw you earlier. Are you Ning Lei's daughter? He recognized himself when he saw his mistress tied up. Ning Miaoshu nodded quickly. I am Ning Lei's daughter, and I have long been at odds with the Tang family, and we are like water and fire. When my father sided with the outsiders, it was actually impossible for him to walk on the same path as the Tang family. Just like the second hospital, why are there so many outsiders around, always guarding the perimeter of the hospital? It's because they know that in the current situation, someone needs to muddy the waters so that they can fish in troubled waters. The Ning family was not considered a big family in the Beijing faction, but they were able to obtain a lot of intelligence from the Beijing faction and could even provide great help to Marx. This force is in no way weaker than the outsiders from the north. Hearing Ning Miaoshu's words, even Johnson next to him couldn't help but widen his eyes. If it is true, as the mistress said, the Ning Miaoshu in front of him is Ning Lei's daughter, then the rest will be easy. The way they obtain intelligence and the help they can get will be far better than they are now. Brother Chin, wait a moment. I'll ask someone. Johnson was not idle either. Use your own information channels. Start to inquire about Ning Miaoshu's situation. About half an hour later, someone finally sent him a document. Open it and take a look. Inside was a photo of Ning Miaoshu. Moreover, Ning Lei, the head of the Ning family, also issued a reward of more than 18 million. Anyone who can bring his daughter back will receive more than 18 million. Brother Chen, you can't be wrong. I just asked someone to investigate Ning Miaoshu's situation. His father did side with the outsiders and was swept away by the Tang family. Now he has suffered heavy losses. But they are just the vanguards of the Beijing faction. If more people from the Beijing faction enter Shanghai City, Ning Miaoshu will play a greater role. After getting Johnson's affirmation, Marx frowned, thought for a while, and finally nodded. He took Ning Miaoshu down the mountain. Chapter 36. Beijing School, Ning Lei. At the same time, there had been countless fights near the hospital, and people with their wounds bandaged were often coming in and out of the hospital. A man who looked to be in his 30s or 40s, with exceptionally strong legs and arms, spat viciously on the ground. Damn it. If this continues, when will it end? Several more people came out from behind, gritting their teeth and with faint bruises on their faces. One of them was a square-faced man with a slicked back hair, and his back was covered with white bandages. The Tang family has gone crazy. In the past few days alone, there have been at least hundreds of waves of people attacking the hospital. The people of the Tang family are all around, watching us eagerly. Even the affiliated forces of the Tang family have begun to take action. When they talked about this matter, they felt as if there was a lump in their hearts. Extremely depressing. Although Mr. Liu and Miss Su organized several counterattacks during this period, the results were far worse than expected. It seemed like some big shot was giving orders behind the scenes. I'm afraid there will be another bloody battle tonight. I really don't know what the point of guarding this broken hospital is. The man with the slick back hair found a step to sit down and took out a pack of cigarettes. When he opened the package, he found that there was not a single cigarette left. It was the man with particularly strong shoulders and thighs who handed him a cigarette. Then the two of them sat on the stairs together and lit the cigarettes in their hands. It's almost 7 o'clock now, and there are faint sounds of rioting around. When they ran to the roof and watched what was happening below, I couldn't help but take a deep breath. I saw team after team of people in black suits, holding steel pipes in their hands, beating anyone they saw as if they were risking their lives. The forces of the surrounding outsiders were defeated and were about to lose the two surrounding streets. Fuck, here they come again. Don't these Tang family members have anything else to do besides watching the hospital? The man with thick arms and legs showed a hideous, bitter smile. The kid from the mental hospital and Johnson are hiding too well. During this period, the Tang family has sent out at least 1,000 people, if not hundreds, but we can't find any news. Tang Hao is not only the head of the Tang family, but also the second-in-command of Shanghai Construction Group and the marriage partner of the Beijing faction. Let alone the Tang family themselves. I'm afraid the woman who married Tang Hao is also anxious. The Tang family is facing multiple pressures now, and they can't help but go crazy. As their discussion came to an end, they knew that things were irreversible. Now the outsiders have suffered heavy losses, and everyone is fighting desperately. If they were to withdraw from Shanghai City like this, I am afraid they would be unwilling to do so. After all, many people poured in their fortunes this time, but ended up losing not only their troops, but also their investments. If I just run back in shame, from now on, they will have no face to stay in the north. I don't know, how many more days can I hold on? The two men hurried downstairs and began to gather people, engaging with the oncoming enemies. Outside Shanghai City, two figures were walking through the streets. They were Marx and Ning. The reason why I returned to Shanghai City was at night. Or maybe it's because there are too many people from the Tang family around. People taking a walk can be seen at almost every intersection. If it weren't for Marx, I'm afraid they wouldn't have gotten here. Just send me to the front. My dad is at the Yellow Sea Club. I will help you find out the news about heaven and earth. Use your phone to contact me then. Seeing the building in the distance, Ning finally let go of the worry that had been hanging in her heart. Marx's angular face, standing in front of me under the moonlight, I suddenly felt it softened a lot. It's not as cold as before. Of course, this was just her feeling after surviving a disaster. Marx had not changed from beginning to end. He was still that suffocatingly cold madman. Also, after sending Ning here, Marx left on his own without even looking at Ning, a beauty that was so beautiful that it made people yearn for her in the eyes of others. But it can't arouse the interest of a madman. Perhaps to Marx, the woman in front of him was not as interesting as a small animal struggling to die. Watching Marx leave, Ning was not idle either, and rushed to the Shanghai building quickly. 10 minutes later, accompanied by banging on the door, the presidential suite on the top floor of the Shanghai building. The door opened. He is a man who is somewhat similar to Ning. He was probably around 45 or 46 years old. Because he hadn't had enough rest for a long time, his eyes became a little red and he looked a little haggard. When the man saw his daughter appear in front of him safe and sound, his eyes widened. Ning Lei, who was a big shot in the past, was as happy as a child at this moment. Miao, are you okay? How did you come back? It's good that you're back. It's good that you're back. Ning Lei actually knew a long time ago that his daughter's disappearance must be related to the Tang family. Therefore, during this period of chaos, he spared no effort, and the Ning family could often be seen in the battles at the hospital. It was to take revenge on the Tang family, especially since Tang Hao's daughter was captured, which made him as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. After entering the room, Ning told her father what had happened in the past few days. Hearing that his daughter had been following that madman, Ning Lei secretly worried about his daughter. Don't tell anyone about that madman. If someone asks you, just say you were left behind along the way and came back on your own after waking up. Now, there is the matter of Marx. It's really too sensitive. If he is not careful, he will drag his daughter into a huge whirlpool. Sometimes even he, as a father, seems powerless. You must not expose the agreement between you and that lunatic. Although your father is now on the side of the outsiders, it is still a bit difficult for you to bear the wrath of the Tang family alone. He knew that outsiders might not be united. They also have their own ideas, especially during this period many problems have been exposed. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been beaten so badly by the Tang family. To put it bluntly, it's a mess. They seem to have a large number of people and a lot of investment, but when it comes to real action, the Tang family alone is enough to make them feel helpless. Dad, don't worry. I'm not a fool. I won't be exposed. But there is still one thing I need to ask you. We got the address of a place called Heaven on Earth from Tang Hao. Can you help me check it? Heaven on Earth? Ning Lei was also stunned. I seem to have vaguely heard of this place, but I couldn't remember it for a moment. Just know, that place is full of celebrities. Each identity is extremely complicated. It's too complicated. One careless move. It is easy to expose yourself to attacks from all sides. He could only pat his daughter's shoulder and comfort her. You should have a good rest first, and don't worry about what happens next. Dad will help you find out about heaven and earth. but that kind of place is full of local forces where they gather for fun, and it's hidden very deeply, so I'm afraid it won't be found in a short time. After saying that, he arranged a room for his daughter next door, came back and made a phone call. Half an hour later, no one knew what he said. Ning Lei himself went out with a frown on his face. Chapter 37 Wong Family Villa, The Beginning of Revenge. After bidding farewell to Ning Miaoshu, Marx went to a crossbow shooting club alone, and according to his own feel, he assembled a compound crossbow and a quiver and tied them to his body. Wait until he appears again. But he had already arrived outside the Zhou family's villa. All around were various bodyguards in black suits. They are neat and orderly, and their arrangement has its own rules, which is very different from ordinary bodyguards. Marx understood it at a glance. These bodyguards were probably specially hired by the Tang family. It's not just here. I'm afraid the hospital where Dora works will also keep a strict control on it. However, if they think that relying on these few people will make him retreat, then the Tang family, the Wong family, and the Zhou family will underestimate him. Marx, squinting his eyes, climbed over the wall from a hidden corner and entered. He knocked down several bodyguards and made sure that no one was around before slowly climbing up to the third floor from the edge of the window. Third floor. The lights are on, and the interior is magnificent. Expensive porcelain can be seen everywhere. These blue and white porcelains are placed everywhere. If they were placed outside, any one piece would cost tens of millions or even hundreds of millions. For more expensive ones, it is possible to cost tens of millions. That blanket made of animal skins. There was a girl in a white skirt squatting. Wang Dong next to him was holding a long whip in his hand. A hearty laugh gradually appeared on his face. There is a hint of morbidity and madness. Ever since Marx shaved off a piece of his scalp, he almost became a joke in the entire celebrity circle. Whenever I look in the mirror, I see the ugly appearance of my head. He wanted to skin Marx and his sister alive. If you look closely at the girl kneeling in the middle of the animal skin blanket, you can actually make out some of Chen Xiaomei's outline. That is to say, Wang Dong spent a lot of money to find a girl who looked very similar to Marx's sister. I was trapped on the third floor and tortured and played with, especially when he saw the girl with bloody wounds on her body. He seemed to have returned to being the arrogant young master of a wealthy family. D. Wang Dong roared hysterically. The whip in his hand lashed out again and again. The girl covered her face and screamed. He was beaten till his skin was torn and his tears could not stop falling. She did receive some money, but that was only because her mother lied to her, saying that if she came to clean houses for rich people, she would get a large sum of money to pay for her brother's education. But when she got here, she found that it was not the case at all. But when she wanted to leave, it was too late. From Wang Dong, she learned that her mother had accepted 3 million yuan from someone else. She was sold to someone else for half a year. Either she could hold on for half a year or return the 3 million. But she remembered, my mother has already used 3 million to buy a house. After paying her brother's tuition, she bought a brand new car for her father. I don't know where the remaining money went. How can I possibly return the 3 million? So, faced with Wang Dong's brutal beating, she could only endure it silently with red eyes. Just when Wang Dong was fighting with all his might, at the foot of the stairs not far away, there was a sound of metal hitting the wall. Boom, boom, boom. The crisp, muffled sound made Wang Dong frown immediately, but when he thought of the tight security around him, even though the Wong family's villa is huge, with 50 well-trained bodyguards, not even a fly can fly in. I can finally put my mind at ease. What are you thinking? Even if that guy has 3 heads and 6 arms, he can't openly enter my Wong family's villa. He raised the whip in his hand and was about to strike again. But then I heard a whoosh sound. An arrow flashed with cold light, accompanied by a sharp sound of breaking through the air, and a bright red blood flower bloomed in his palm. Intense pain. Wang Dong let out a heart-wrenching scream. Then he turned his head. With head bowed, a figure holding a silver-white scalpel. When the man raised his head, he slowly opened his mouth. He revealed a ferocious face without any emotion, like a devil. Wang Dong's heart trembled violently. Ignore the pain in your hands. Want to turn around and run away. But what greeted him was another cold arrow. With a whoosh sound, his calf was shot through and nailed to the ground. The animal skin blanket stained red with blood. Every time I pulled my legs, I felt suffocating pain. Wang Dong raised his head in horror and looked in front of him. Marx's pupils showed a hint of excitement. which could be said to be the extreme of fear. Marx did not stop. Walked to Wang Dong's side. Squat down, looking at the left leg where blood was constantly gushing out. Reach out, grab the tail of the arrow, and stir it vigorously. Wang Dong instantly let out a scream like a pig being slaughtered. But that's not all. Marx came from a table not far away. Picking up a pair of scissors, he returned to Wang Dong, grabbed his hand, and pressed on his ring finger. If I remember correctly, my sister's ring finger was shattered by you guys. Mention this matter. Wang Dong's eyes widened even further. His teeth couldn't stop chattering, and he spoke in a trembling and fearful voice. No, I've already had a piece of my scalp cut off by you. If you break another finger, I'll really become a cripple. What about my sister? Wang Dong opened his mouth and wanted to say, how can your sister compare with me? Your sister is just a beast raised by a few poor guys. I am the high and mighty prince of the Wong group. The family's assets alone, converted into money, could block the river's mouth. What does your sister think of her? Can you compare with me? But think about it. These words cannot be said. Otherwise, you will feel more painful than death. As long as you don't cut my fingers, I'll agree to whatever you say. Money. Our family has a lot of money. There are porcelain and antiques around. You can take whatever you like. If you want to vent your anger at the girl next to you, her family took $3 million from me. You can do whatever you want. But what about Wang Dong's words? Marx just shook his head, pressed his wrist down slightly, and snapped. The entire finger was cut off, and blood gushed out. The whole room was filled with a strong smell of blood. Wang Dong was about to open his mouth in pain, but Marx raised the scissors and stabbed his throat hard. He didn't even have time to make a sound. His mouth was already filled with blood. Such means. The girl who was squatting on the ground next to her was so scared that her face turned pale and her pupils contracted. It was as if I had seen the most horrific thing in my life. Tears welled up in her eyes. She shook her head uncontrollably, her voice choked with panic. He was afraid that Wang Dong would die in the next second, and it would be his turn. Chapter 38, Madman, Killer God. 3 more chapters. Same. Wang Dong's screams quickly alarmed the bodyguards below. In just a few minutes, there were bursts of commotion. More and more people began to rush up the stairs. Marx picked up the silver scalpel, blocking the stairs, looking at the dense crowd rushing upwards. There was no sign of fear at all, and those who rushed up also had red eyes. The people they fought so hard to protect were tortured to a pulp right before their eyes. If this gets out, they will no longer be able to work in the industry. But when they rushed to the stairs and wanted to knock down the madman on the 3rd floor, a silver-white luster, with a sharp reflection, cut the throat of the bodyguard who rushed up. The bodyguard covered his throat with both hands, and blood oozed from his fingertips. Everyone stopped, but after a moment's silence, they all rushed forward again. However, although these people all have some abilities, they are all the best among bodyguards. But that's only for ordinary people. Faced with such people, Marx doesn't even have to be taken seriously. The silvery white scalpel looks like a butterfly dancing on the tip of the knife. It slipped lightly through the gaps between everyone. He always finds a fatal spot so that once these people are stabbed, they can never get up again. Some of them were holding steel pipes and stun batons, but even though the figure was right in front of them, he always arrived at the critical moment. Dodging the sticks they were hitting him with, the keen sense of danger made everyone swallow their saliva. Unconsciously, the staircase was already filled with densely packed corpses. Bright red blood stained both sides of the stairs. It's as if it had been repainted red. It was like purgatory on earth, making everyone stop on the 2nd floor. You looked at me, I looked at you, and no one dared to step forward. Marx turned around with disdain, grabbed Wang Dong from the ground, picked up the broken ring finger from the side, and started to go downstairs on his own. As he got closer step by step, the bodyguards were also retreating step by step. The silver-white scalpel was still dripping blood. Wang Dong opened his mouth and wanted to speak, but all that came out of his mouth was blood. He couldn't utter a word and could only look at the bodyguards in fear and pleading, hoping that they could come up and save him. But following the battle at the stairs just now, looking at the figure in front of me, he is like a lone man blocking the way for 10,000. No matter how courageous they are, knowing that they were going to die, no one dared to step forward and could only watch Wang Dong being dragged away bit by Marx, until it disappeared into the mangroves outside. A security guard in a brown suit took out his mobile phone, took a video of the surroundings, and sent it to the people over there. Immediately following, it was just waves of angry roars, throwing cups, smashing things, and roaring hysterically. But everything was useless. The man came back and broke into the Wong family's villa unscrupulously, guarded by 50 well-trained bodyguards. Wang Dong was taken away openly. He blocked the stairs. One man beat 50 bodyguards, who dared not to step forward. In the middle of the stairs, there were many figures lying on the ground, their lives or deaths unknown. This kid, I want to tell everyone through my actions, no matter how many people they arrange, no matter how endless their methods are. Marx, it can also be done without anyone noticing. Even openly, they could go into a place and twist their heads off. Find out where that kid lives. Also, get everyone from Shanghai Construction Group to the vicinity of Dora Hospital. I have a vague feeling that after Wang Dong, it will be Dora. After the voice over there ended, the bodyguard in the brown suit, who had just posted the video, revealed a somewhat bitter expression. What others just saw was just a video of the end of the battle. No one knew better than them how terrifying the young man standing at the top, holding a silver-white scalpel, with empty eyes and like a machine, felt. It's like a mountain that can never be crossed, a gap that countless people cannot fill. That person represented the abyss. He seemed to have crawled out of hell, venting his boundless anger and using the most cruel means to tell everyone. He will definitely find out everything and find out those who hurt his sister one by one. First it was Dora, then it was Tang Hao, and now even Wang Dong is in trouble. If we continue investigating, wouldn't those people be implicated? Gurgle. The bodyguard in the brown suit had a trembling voice. He didn't know who those people were. But even Tang Tiansheng, the helmsman of the Tang family, would only reveal fear and timidity in his eyes when he mentioned those people's names. Even the Tang family, the most powerful force in Shanghai city today, dare not mention the names of those people. You can imagine. What do those people represent? That is the sky of Shanghai city, a world that no one can reach. If we continue to investigate, we will have to face the risk of the sky collapsing and the earth collapsing. But that guy is a lunatic. Even if the sky falls, he might not care, right? The bodyguard in the brown suit sighed. Those are not what he should care about. It's not something he can ask about because of his status. He began to order people to clean up the battlefield and clear out all the people at the stairs. The bodyguards whose throats were slashed. There's almost no hope. Others, as well as some others, although injured, just need to be sent to the hospital in time. But there is still a glimmer of hope. Whenever the man in the brown suit saw those suffocatingly precise wounds, his scalp would tingle. Every wound on their body is unnecessary. This technique, coupled with the speed of the knife, uses a short scalpel. I really can't imagine how fast this person can use the knife. He thinks so. With his strength, he is considered to be among the best in the bodyguard industry. Before he met Marx, he also thought that others were exaggerating, but it was only when he faced him face to face that he was convinced. You'll find out how terrible this person is. Swallowing subconsciously, he pulled a corpse aside. The bodyguards around him all showed a hint of sadness on their faces. After all, they were just out to make money, not the Tang family's hired assassins. Now there were large-scale casualties in the team. Even if it has reached their point, I couldn't help but feel a different kind of emotion rising in my heart. Boss, even though the Tang family gave a lot of money, that kid is just a lunatic. If the Tang family had a solution, it wouldn't have dragged on until now, without even touching that kid. Boss, don't you feel hot holding this money? A man who was as powerful as the man in the brown suit walked out slowly. The Tang family gave them more than 3.7 million. He just wanted to buy the lives of 50 of them. This is undoubtedly a pipe dream. The man in the brown suit opened his mouth, but he was unable to refute. More than 3,700,000. Although the money is a lot, they can still earn it in 3 to 5 years if they work hard. At first, the Tang family gave them the money, just hired them for a month. But everyone couldn't help but want to retreat. After all, if the money was divided up and distributed equally to each bodyguard, even if many people died, it would only be a few 100,000 yuan. Let me think about this matter, and I'll give you the answer tomorrow. The man in the brown suit sighed. If you cancel the task for no reason. In the bodyguard industry, they have a stigma, and it will be difficult for them to get assignments in the future. Chapter 39, he even had breakfast before leaving. Fourth update. Old Town. An abandoned old bridge. Two lovers walk hand in hand nearby. The surrounding moonlight sprinkled on the surface of the river, creating ripples, and seemed to pull the bright moon into the water, making it particularly blurry. Perhaps it is because of this environment. Let the young couple holding hands. Unable to help themselves, they all move their faces closer. They were about to kiss. But suddenly, it was interrupted by a hysterical scream. The boy on the left felt his legs go weak, and he almost fell to the ground. Wait for them to check out the surrounding situation. There was only the pitch-black night, without a single light in sight. This was originally a small venue for dating. The places we chose were all deserted. The sound just now was like the howling of ghosts and wolves. They were so scared that their scalps went numb, and the boy quickly pulled his girlfriend. Hurry, let's go. I always feel like there's something dirty nearby. The girl was also a little scared. Following her boyfriend, she quickly left the old bridge. About 10 minutes later, screams were heard again. Under the old bridge, right next to the river, there was a figure lying on the ground, covered in blood. But the only thing missing is the ring finger. The person who screamed was Wang Dong, who had just been captured, his eyes filled with fear. But there was a figure wearing a baseball cap and holding a silver-white scalpel standing not far away. With his back to the moonlight, he couldn't see the expression on that face clearly, but the hands that were trembling slightly due to excitement made Wang Dong in front of him even more frightened. No, I beg you, let me go. I will kowtow to your sister. As long as you don't kill me, I can help you do anything. Marx squatted beside him, those cold yet excited eyes, looking Wang Dong up and down. I won't kill you, but I have a way that's more satisfying than death. After saying that, Marx took the scalpel and gestured up and down at Wang Dong in front of him. Then he was satisfied and tied Wang Dong's hands with a rope, accompanied by hysterical screams. Near the old bridge, not even a cat dared to come near. I don't know how much time has passed. Marx cut open Wang Dong's skin bit by bit and heard the other party's voice gradually become hoarse. Immediately following, it seems like I can't bear it anymore. He gave Marx was filled with fear, as if he was looking at more than one person. But it was a ghost that crawled out of hell. I can no longer endure the torture that is almost insane. There was no hope for life in Wang Dong's eyes anymore. He suddenly turned over and rolled into the river. As for Marx, he watched Wang Dong sink into the river little by little and disappear. Shaked his head in disappointment. Compared to Tang Hao, Wang Dong is far inferior. At least Tang Hao was tortured for a whole night. He didn't even reveal the information of those 5 people. But what about Wang Dong? Just over 2 hours later, he committed suicide by jumping into the river. After doing all this, he disappeared quietly into the night. Soon we arrived at the building of Wang Group, even though there were many people guarding around. But compared to the Wang family's villa, the number of bodyguards here seems to be a little too few. With his ability, but it took 10 minutes, I have already arrived at the chairman's office. The lights in the entire building had been turned off long ago, and there was no one in sight. He was sitting on the bench in the chairman's office. He took out the severed finger from his pocket, thrown on the table not far away. Also thrown out was a silver necklace that Wang Dong had been wearing around his neck. He closed his eyes and fell asleep here as if no one was around. When he woke up again, it was almost dawn. Yawned. He then took out an employee badge from the drawer outside and put it around his neck. In the staff lounge, you can also see a lot of work clothes. Just change into any other set. He got his breakfast in the cafeteria. There were gradually more and more people around, but no one noticed that there was an outsider in their company. Wait until you were full. He also didn't forget to grab a bottle of drink. Put it in your pocket. It was not until around 10:40 that a terrified scream was heard from upstairs. It was obviously the voice of an old man. Immediately afterwards, everyone in the entire building fell into chaos. Marx opened his drink, took a sip, and slowly began to walk outside. Facing us, the elevator was opened and a group of aggressive people walked out, followed by a man in his 40s. He was holding a severed finger and a silver necklace in his hand, and his body was shaking uncontrollably. There was another person crying next to him, a woman around 34 or 35 years old, whispering a few words to the old man from time to time. The old man's face turned even darker. Marx walked into the elevator while drinking a drink and didn't even take them seriously. The two groups passed each other, but after walking a few dozen meters, the old man suddenly stopped. He looked back toward the elevator, shouted to the person next to him, "Check the surveillance. Check all the surveillance immediately." Following his order, the scene from last night immediately appeared in the monitoring room. I saw it too. The boy wearing a peaked cap entered the chairman's office. After he came in, he threw the things on the table as if nothing had happened. He crossed his legs and slept that night on the sofa where the chairman rested. The next morning, following the surveillance video, they saw the boy take a work badge and change his clothes in the employee lounge. I ran to the restaurant and followed many employees to eat. Before leaving, he didn't forget to take a bottle of drink. The chairman who followed passed by him, but there was no change in his expression. Just like that, he left Wong Group. See this scene. The old man punched the computer angrily. There was a loud bang. Sparks flew from the computer screen, startling everyone nearby. His fist was clearly covered in blood due to the glass fragments. But the old man seemed to feel nothing. Pulled his hand back. The woman next to her was about 34 or 35 years old. He quickly asked someone to bring a medical kit and started bandaging the old man. Whenever I think back to that time, that kid slept in his office all night as if nothing had happened. She left behind her son's necklace and severed finger. I even had breakfast at their company, got a drink, and left in front of him. He felt like his lungs were about to explode. After a while, his hands tightly grasped his chest. His eyes rolled back, and he passed out. The people around were all terrified. He immediately drove the chairman to the hospital. Only the woman, who was about 34 or 35, was left. Covering her face, she cried in the monitoring room. The man's words were still echoing in my mind. If you hadn't spoiled your son like this, would he have ended up like this? If we have to decide who is right and who is wrong, it's that you shouldn't protect him like this every time. The woman's voice was a little choked, but she was murmuring. He's my son. What's wrong with me pampering him a little? Besides, don't you always run to school in shame to clean up your son's ass? Chapter 40. Storm Rising Again, Part 5. Just as the old woman was muttering to herself, the door opened again. This time I walked in. They are two figures with extraordinary momentum. Both of them were wearing casual clothes, one in black and the other in white, with cigars in their mouths and cold eyes. It felt a bit unusual. The temperature inside dropped quite a bit just by walking in. When I saw these two people, the old woman is still talking to herself. Suddenly her eyes widened, and after a brief conversation, the old woman left in a hurry. The two people who came and looked at each other, then looked at the broken computer not far away, asked the people outside to change the monitor, checked the surveillance. About half an hour, the man in white casual clothes began to smile. Marx on the computer screen, he praised him generously. This kid can do it. Just based on this mentality, he can surpass 90% of the people in your Tang family. The bearded man in black casual clothes seemed to disagree with his words and snorted. You are only boosting others' morale and destroying your own prestige. What's more, the Wong family is our running dogs no matter W. Ha! Wong Datong's son was taken away openly right under our noses. That guy even dared to come to Wong's group openly and put the necklace and the severed finger in the chairman's office. From here we can see how bold and reckless this kid is. If we let him continue, who knows what he might do next? But the man in white casual clothes just flicked the ashes between his fingers. He said with disdain, if it weren't for those little bastards who went too far, would things have gotten to this point? Humph, they may have gone too far, but that's not something you can discuss. Also, be clear about your identity. You're just a thug hired by the Tang family. The other party's words. Make the man in white casual clothes laugh instead of getting angry. Junior brother, if you have the ability to solve it, why would you pay such a high price and invite me here? What's wrong with me scolding them? Don't you see what they have done over the years? If I didn't need the thing that the Tang family has on hand, do you really think I would help you? Also, since you guys have done this to her sister, you should be prepared for revenge. It has come to this. There is no need to put on that stinky face. If I am unhappy, I will just turn around and leave. After saying that, the man in white casual clothes stood up. He was about to walk out with a look of disdain on his face. The man in black clothes inside clenched his teeth and was obviously very angry. But he could only soften his tone. Brother, since we are already here, why bother? Everyone is just pursuing their own interests. In the final analysis, they are just taking different paths. Even if you don't agree with this statement. The man in white clothes turned around and looked at the other person. He left in silence with a sneer. Only the man in black clothes was left, and he flicked the cigar in his hand against the wall. With a puff sound, fire splashed, and his face turned gloomy at this moment. Obviously, I can't figure it out. It was just a trivial matter. Why is there such a commotion now? Just because of a lunatic who came out of a mental hospital? It seems that the local forces in Shanghai City have indeed been slack in recent years. When this is over, it's time to give those ignorant bastards a beating. These two events were undoubtedly heavy blows to the Tang family and its affiliated forces. After all, what they are facing are not outsiders who are easy to bully. Instead, he is a madman who appears and disappears at any time, and can take their heads at any time. He was able to take Wong Dong away from the Zhou family villa in front of 50 well-trained bodyguards. It can take their lives while they are sleeping. Someone was able to sneak into the Wong group quietly and place the severed finger and the necklace on Wong Datong's desk. They could tear their son's head off. Sent to them, therefore, when they received the news. Many forces affiliated with the Tang family were terrified and frightened out of their wits. Different from the Tang family and the local forces in Shanghai City. These two things, however, gave all outsiders a shot of stimulant. In the club that Master Lu had just bought, a figure in his 50s or 60s, holding a glass of red wine in his hand, clapped the table in front of him excitedly. Well, this guy did a great job. Not only did he deal with the kid from the Wong family, he also went to the Wong group openly, took a nap, and had breakfast. It's so beautifully done. Marx left last time. Wong Datong and Zhou Buwei, two lackeys under the Tang family, acted as the vanguard to fight against outsiders. It is unknown how many outsiders they killed, as well as the strongholds they had worked so hard to build. Originally, they were planning to wait until the Tang family revealed their flaws, but that didn't happen. Instead, he almost pushed himself into a dead end. Things are not going in the right direction. It started to get worse and worse, and it looked like if it continued like this, it would be the end of us sooner or later. But suddenly such good news came. Wong Datong's son died, and he even ran to their Wong group to show off his power, but they can't do anything about it. After this incident, it was undoubtedly a fatal blow to Wong Datong. They will definitely release more people recently to track down Marx's whereabouts, and their attention on us will be relaxed little by little. But now that we have been pushed to this point, this matter will definitely not end so easily. He held the glass of red wine in his hand. He placed it on the table, looked across at Miss Sue, who was bright and charming in a red evening dress, and spoke slowly. Let's take the Wong family as an example. What do you think, Miss Sue? Being looked at by Mr. Liu, Miss Sue did not show any shyness at all, but instead burst into giggles. It made the two big cats in front of them look a bit exaggerated. Master Liu has spoken, and I also had a restaurant burned down, so we can't just end this easily. Wong Datong has been a bit unscrupulous recently, relying on the support of the Tang family. Let's teach them a lesson. With Miss Sue's approval, Mr. Liu also smiled happily, took out his mobile phone, and sent several text messages. After a while, many people came into the room. Master Liu explained some more things. The person who came and clasped his fists heavily glanced at Miss Sue next to him, and she also said, "It's done. Not only will you get the benefits that Master Liu promised you, but I will also pay out of my own pocket and give each of you 1 million as resettlement allowance. With Master Liu and I here, we can ensure that you can leave Shanghai City safely. Although there are outsiders now, the situation is not optimistic. But he does have the ability to protect a few people. Otherwise, the Tang family would not have fought for so long and failed to capture even the second hospital. It's because they have a constant supply of strength behind us. Otherwise, with just those few misfits in the second hospital, they would have been wiped out long ago. Thank you, Master Liu, and thank you, Miss Sue." After receiving the assurance, the few people left the room silently. Only Mr. Liu and Miss Sue were left. They raised the glasses of red wine in their hands and clinked them together gently. Dry. Cheers. Chapter 41, The Address of Heaven and Earth. After leaving Wong Group, Marx went to the second hospital again to confirm that his parents and sister were safe. Moreover, several $1 million inexplicably appeared in the card, but Marx did not care about it. Instead, he was wearing a white coat that he had brought from somewhere and stood at the door of the ward. After watching quietly for a long time, when he was about to leave, he was stopped by someone. The person walking towards me was Miss Sue, who was wearing a red evening dress and had a charming smile on her face. Because when Marx came in, he didn't hide himself too much, and he knew that the second hospital was now an outsider's territory. He doesn't need to be as reserved as he is outside. When he entered the second hospital, the news had already reached Miss Sue's ears. Marx silently watching the ward. "Mr. Chun, nice to meet you." Although she knew that Marx was a madman, she knew that this madman was stubborn and difficult to communicate with since she had seen him in Nanjianka last time. But he has his own merits, and it is not impossible to communicate with him. Facing the strange woman coming towards him. If it were an ordinary person, seeing Miss Sue's enchanting beauty, they would probably have had inappropriate thoughts. But what Marx saw seemed to be a skeleton. His eyes stayed on it for no more than a second before he put his hands in his pockets and walked past Miss Sue. When the two people passed each other, Miss Sue smiled. Her smile was particularly charming. Her watery eyes narrowed into crescents, and her clean and fair face revealed an intriguing expression. Mr. Chun has done two big things in succession. Now, there are people chasing Mr. Chun everywhere. Why don't you rest in the hospital for a night? Wait for some time, calm down a little, and then leave the hospital. Speaking of which, we have also prepared a big gift for Mr. Chun. I believe Mr. Chun will know what it is soon. But Miss Sue's words did not cause any fluctuations in Marx's heart. He walked forward without stopping until Miss Sue finished speaking. The person has already gone far away. Several people following Miss Sue. Seeing Marx's attitude, he couldn't help but look a little unhappy. But I thought that the other person was a lunatic. This emotion subsided. After all, it is better to expect a sow to climb a tree than to expect a madman to talk to you about the ways of the world. Miss Sue, this kid who came out of the mental hospital, may be very skilled, but he is obviously not someone who is easy to control. As the saying goes, if you are too strong, you will break easily. If we put all our bets on him, it seems a bit absurd. How could Miss Sue not know? But now, they don't have much choice. There is only one breakthrough, unless they can find a better alternative. Otherwise, the Tang family would have to drive them out of Shanghai City. Although he is a madman, he has accomplished something that no outsider can do. He can make the entire Shanghai City chaotic. He can make the Tang family, Zhou family, and Wong family extremely busy. Ever since Wang Datong's son died, and since that guy went to the Wong Group's building, don't you feel that the pressure exerted on us outsiders has begun to decrease? Hear what Miss Sue said, although others were somewhat dissatisfied with Marx. But he nodded silently, because what Miss Sue said was true, and because of what Marx did, the Tang family began to be distracted. The Zhou family and the Wong family, these two mad dogs, no longer just stared at them, but began to disperse their manpower to look for Marx's whereabouts everywhere. But this person is too secretive in what he does. It was so secretive that even the Tang, Zhou, and Wong families couldn't find any clues. Besides, the fact that he was able to walk into the hospital openly proves that he also knows that we outsiders are helping him. Knowing that neither of us is an enemy, he will definitely not stand against us. If we use this sword well, our plan to disintegrate the local forces can be implemented perfectly. That being said, there was no way for everyone to refute it, and they could only accept it with pleasure. When Marx left the hospital and disappeared into the vast streets, when he appeared again, he was already near the Shanghai Club. A woman wearing a light blue skirt with a graceful, plump, and sexy figure walked down quickly from the top, holding an envelope in her hand. This person was Ning Miaoshu. After she returned, her father told her not to worry about anything. But from her father's face, she could vaguely tell that her father must know something. Because of this, after her father left, she entered his room and found a lot of things, including the clue that Marx wanted. I have copied all the news about heaven and earth into the envelope, but that place is only open once a week at a different location, and there are more guards than you might imagine. Only powerful people in Shanghai City can enter. Each of them has an extraordinary status. If you really want to go there, I advise you to be prepared. In addition to the contents of the envelope, she also found out that the Tang family and other forces had invited many experts from outside. In the past, there were not many bodyguards who could fight in Shanghai City. Those with top skills can defeat them in one move. But now it's different, especially since Wang Datong's son died outside. Marx openly had breakfast at Wang's group. It has even caused many high-ranking officials to start worrying about their lives and property. It was also because of this that a strange message appeared on the road in a short period of time. That is it. As long as you have the ability and the courage to risk your life, the Tang family will pay the price you want. Whether you want money, women, or other things, as long as you want it, the Tang family can give it to you. As a result, many powerful men with extraordinary skills entered Shanghai City one after another. Marx, you have to think it over carefully. In the past, Shanghai City only had two forces, local and foreign. But now, it has become a mixed bag. Many desperate criminals have joined in under the call of the Tang family. If you really want to go to heaven on earth, you will most likely be attacked from all sides, and the consequences will be disastrous. He handed the envelope in his hand to Marx. Although Ning Miaoshu was somewhat afraid of Marx in her heart, he was her savior after all. She didn't want anything to happen to Marx, and Marx could do a lot of things that could also reduce the pressure on her father. Many things can be done slowly, and there is no need to rush them. Marx took the envelope and just opened it to take a look. Inside was the address of Taishan Renjian and the rules for entry. More importantly, there is still about 2 days until heaven and earth opens again. 2 days later, at 7 p.m. in the evening, you can go to the designated location and enter paradise. Thanks for the stuff. Marx put the envelope in his pocket and walked away. Looking at the back, Ning Miaoshu opened her mouth, feeling vaguely uneasy. She dared to guarantee that the opening of heaven and earth this time would be accompanied by an ambush and the gathering of various masters. So it would be a question whether one could get in alive. Not to mention the time to leave. Once you are surrounded, even if you have extraordinary abilities, you will only have death. I hope you will be okay. Ning Miaoshu shook her head and returned to the Shanghai club. The surroundings became quiet again. Chapter 42. Got beaten again.